Welcome to this edition of Draft Utopia. Chris Ransom, William Yanish here, and we're live on Restream. We'll be live on TalkShoe in 30 seconds, but we're live on Restream. I'm gonna break down some picks, and basically for the next hour, what we're gonna do is we're gonna break down the first round, not the first round, but I got up to 180 picks in the live stream for day 3. I will break down pick by pick once we get to round 6, but right now we're just going to recap what happened in the first few rounds. We're not going to go through every pick, but top 4 was Cam Ward went number 1 to the Titans. Travis Hunter went number 2 to Jacksonville. Abdul Carter went 3rd to the New York Giants as a pass rusher. Will Campbell went to New England at 4. The Cleveland Browns got Mason Graham at 5 thanks to trading down with Jacksonville. And Ashton Ginty went number 6 to the Raiders. I mean, it was a pretty mundane top 6. We kind of knew how the top 4 was going to play out. What we didn't expect was the Travis Hunter trade. That was the real curveball of this top 6, William. And Mason Graham to the Browns, Ginty to the Raiders.
A lot of times, there's always trades up for quarterbacks, but obviously there weren't many quarterbacks in this draft. So,
and it turns out the Saints are going to. I thought the Saints were going to play Kelvin Banks at left tackle, but it does sound like Kelvin Banks is going to play left tackle instead of left guard. So early speculation is that Banks is going to be the left tackle instead of the left guard. So I don't know what's going to happen there. I do think he's the best lineman on the board. That's why I gave the Saints an A+. But I don't know if he's going to play left tackle and they're going to move Fuaga over to right tackle, like some are speculating, or if they're going to move him inside to guard. That is still to be decided in New Orleans. Because I thought Fuaga had a good year. I think he's better at right tackle than left tackle, but at the same token, I don't think he's performed poorly enough to move over. I don't think he's performed poorly enough to lose the left tackle job either. So I think that's a wait and see situation. But either way, Banks is the 5th starter for New Orleans. Bears got Loveland. The 49ers got Williams. Cowboys got Booker. Kenneth Grant went to Miami. Tyler Warren's a Colt. Walker, I did not like that pick. And Walter Nolan, I was a big fan of the Walter Nolan pick. I thought I gave that an A+ grade. I gave that an A. I thought I gave that an A+.
That's an A+, man.
That is an A+. I agree that's an A+. I thought I gave it an A+ when I did the draft last week. I didn't. So we're going to go back and correct at it right now because I thought I gave the Cardinals an A+ for that last week. That was an A. That should be an A+ for Arizona.
Niners, would have gotten an A+ for drafting him at 11. So let me just say that.
Yeah, I mean, that is an A+. I thought I gave the Cardinals an A+. I don't know why that says A. I thought I gave the Cardinals an A+. I rarely have to correct things, but this is a situation and a circumstance where correcting is necessary because I initially thought I gave the Cardinals an A+ during our live stream last week. I did not.
There were so many A's, dude. There were so many A's to start off the draft. I believe for whatever people were thinking was lack of talent or maybe something like that in some of the positions that these teams really help themselves out.
Exactly.
And I think it's going to work out for there's going to be fewer busts in this first round than
Shamar Stewart. I love that pick
in
for
recent
Cincinnati
memory
at 17.
Yeah.
I think he's going to push Miles Murphy and Joseph Osai for that defensive end, that left end spot next to Trey Hendrickson. It's just going to make the competition there better. I thought the Seahawks reached on Gray Zabel. There were other guys I had higher on my board. Clay Webb of Jacksonville State, who went undrafted. Donovan Jackson of Ohio State. Dylan Fairchild of Georgia would have been a better fit at left guard than Zabel. I get Zabel at a good Senior Bowl, but I think that was a big reach at 18 by Seattle. My favorite pick in the back half of round 1 was Emeka Egbuka. I had him at 11 on my board, and so for Tampa Bay to get him, to pair him with Evans and Godwin, and now McMillan's your number 4, and you have Shepard and Palmer as your backups. And they also drafted Tez Johnson in round 7, so we'll get to that later. But Buccaneers had a really good draft. I gave the Broncos an A for Barron, not an A plus, because they already have 2 good corners, and I don't think Barron's a Pro Bowl caliber corner. I think he's a high-end starter, but I don't think he's a Pro Bowl caliber corner. I think his ceiling might be higher than Riley Moss, but Riley Moss was so dominant last year, I can't just hand Barron the number 2 corner job outright. He's got to earn it, and he's got to take it from Riley if Riley gets injured again. So right now, and Barron...
Perhaps the number 1 position in the draft, or the most important in the draft, might have been the weakest in the first round. I mean, and it's just interesting to see Will Johnson fall and things happen like they did. Secondary become so important. So.
Donovan Jackson fell to the Vikings at 24. I love that pick. The Vikings solidified their offensive line. I gave the Giants a D for Jackson Dart because, I mean, he struggles to complete passes on 5-step and 7-step drops. That's the big thing I noticed with him. And I get it. The Saints, the Giants, and Browns all had Dart ahead of Shadur. That's fine. But I don't think Jackson Dart is going to be a future franchise quarterback. And the Giants, they just screwed themselves out of drafting a quarterback in a very rich, very good 2026 class by taking Dart at 25. Falcons got James Pierce Jr., Ravens got Malachi Starks. I love that value at 27. I love the Tyleik Williams pick for Detroit at 28 as well. That's a really good pick for them. And, he can play. He could be a day 1 starter in Detroit, but they have a Lee McNeil. They have DJ Reader. They really don't need him to be a day 1 starter, but he's good enough to where he can be that. Connor Lee's a bookend right tackle to Tunsil. And then the Eagles took Jihad Campbell at 31. That was the only A+ the Eagles got for the entire draft. But they do have good starters on both sides of the ball. They will be contenders again next year. We'll break that down a little bit further when the schedule comes out. And then the Chiefs got Josh Simmons to wrap up the first round. And this is going to go a little bit quicker now, because now that we went through the first round, we can get into round. You have anything you want to say about round 1 before we get into round 2, William?
No, man. I think we pretty much summarized what happened, and I mean, what was expected to happen. We saw it coming, and like I said, I think we just hit the bottom line right there.
Sounds good. Joey said he was going to call in, but I'm going to let him call in when he feels like calling in. Yeah, the thing with the Browns is they took Carson Swessinger. I really didn't like that pick. I thought the Texans getting Jaden Higgins, that was a smart decision. You get him on a rookie contract as your number 2 next to Nico Collins, who you've paid, and you have Kirk. And basically, Kirk's the temporary slot receiver until Tank Dell returns from an injury. Once Dell returns, he's your permanent slot. But you have Kirk for depth as a number 4. You have Watson, you have Berrios, you have John Mechie as depth players while Dell's injured. You have Schultz, you have Brevin Jordan, and you have Cade Stover. And you just have a lot of options for Houston. I know I probably should have gave Seattle an A+ for Nick Eamon-Wari. I gave this an A grade, though, because I had Xavier Watts higher on my board. I don't know why this says Tennessee Titans. I thought I corrected all the errors. I guess I have to correct another error. I mean, I didn't even see that. I didn't even see that I left Tennessee Titans here. But yeah,
we all know how much
second, work Joey. And Joey's calling right as I have to correct something. But yeah, we're just recapping the draft, what happened. We're on round 2. William only has an hour. I'll let you rant, but it's gotta be in the second hour. Okay, that's all I'm saying, because William's only here till 11. Then he's got other stuff he's got to do today. But I promise you, we will let you provide input on some of the picks. We did recap the first round. I gave the Browns an A+ for Judkins. I love that pick. I love the Jonas Savannah pick. It turns out New England was going to take Savannah at 38. But then the Dolphins traded up for him. So then the Patriots' plan B was Trevian Henderson. Patriots, they were one of the last 4 teams to not get an A+ grade. So, I mean,
I'm actually shocked that you didn't give I actually shocked you didn't go opponents for Judkins because one, he's from Ohio State, and you love Ohio State, and two, I think he might have been your number 2 running.
He was. I gave the Browns an A+. I said I gave them an A+. I didn't say I didn't. I said
I was thinking you would throw a party and do anything you could because Judkins was your guy.
I mean, he was my number 2 guy. I gave the Browns an A+ for that. I mean, I gave the Browns an F for the UCLA linebacker, but I gave them an A+ for that. And that's the thing.
I'm sure you would have thrown back shots for Judkins because you were big on Judkins.
I love Judkins, okay? I freaking love Judkins. But Carson Schlesinger was a reach at 33. But yeah, Henderson at 38. I gave it an F. I see a floor player. I see a floor player. I don't see a ceiling player. I see a floor player with very good production in their draft year, but nothing special. Well, other people,
because he was a guy that was all over the board. I saw him as high as in the 40s.
And when we did our middle linebacker rankings in October, we talked about Olaf Fadejo, the guy the Titans drafted as an edge rusher in our middle linebacker rankings. We didn't talk about Carson Schlesinger. We talked about, and we both viewed him as a backup inside linebacker. But Luther Burden, I mean, I love the Luther Burden pick at 39. I gave the Saints an F for Tyler Show, but there's a lot of Saints fans that are saying he's going to start as a rookie. TJ Sanders, I like Tonka Hemingway more than TJ Sanders. And I also like the, we'll get to the Bills later, but yeah, I'm just trying to get through these picks as quickly as possible since William only has till 11. I know Alfred Collins to San Francisco. That was a great pick, but people like Alfred Collins' athletic traits more than Deion Walker. And I did have Deion Walker ahead of Collins, but people loved the athletic traits for Alfred Collins. And then
I started watching Collins, and he plays really high, dude, and sometimes gets knocked off on run defense. But let me tell you, I mean, the guy's athletic. He has some pass rush moves, but like I said, there's just that one knock. I mean, he looks strong. I didn't overly watch the tape because I had a few things going, but it was an absolute need, and I like it.
I think we can agree the biggest steal in round 2 is Will Johnson of the Cardinals. You get that number 1 corner, and now you have him. You have Max Milton. You have Garrett Williams. Cardinals did take another corner we'll get to later. Ursary went to the Texans. He could develop behind Cam Robinson and take over as the blind side. Demetrius Knight. The Bengals are either going to trade Jermaine Pratt or cut him. That's the biggest reason they drafted Demetrius Knight. And they also got Barrett Carter, which we'll get to later. But, that's the biggest That's the biggest reason they took Demetrius Knight. And I think that's smart. If they know they're going to cut him, if they know they're going to cut or trade Jermaine Pratt, it's smart to reload at linebacker if that's the thought process. I thought the Seahawks reached on Arroyo.
Right there.
I was not high on Arroyo. I know he had a good Senior Bowl, but I like Fannin much better on tape. Nick Scorton to Carolina was a really good value pick. I was not a fan of Oladejo as an edge rusher. I mean, but I don't know. We'll see what happens with Oladejo. I think he's a backup. I don't think he's a day 1 starter. I love the Benjamin Morrison pick with the next selection. I mean, Tony Mario was upset the Buccaneers took Benjamin Morrison because of his injury history. But I'm not as worried about the medicals as Tony is when it comes to Benjamin Morrison. And if he can stay healthy like Will Johnson, he is going to be a steal in round 2. Both Arizona and Tampa probably had the best overall value picks of round 2 if we really look at it.
Yeah, I didn't like Arizona's draft at all, especially.
I loved Arizona's draft. What are you talking about? We both loved Arizona's draft because
there was some sarcasm drifting there.
That's the fan in you. That's not the critic in you. I mean, the critic in you loves their draft. The fan in you hates their draft. That's kind of how it is with Joey and other AFC North teams. That's kind of how it is.
I gotta throw in both because that's been my entire life, man. Football's always been there, and it's that hope. There's always next year, and it just takes my mind off of troubles and lets me, it puts me at peace, and I love it. And
Yeah,
so
Benjamin Morrison
there's
is going to
always
start out as the dime corner, but if McCollum, Dean, or Tyke Smith gets injured, he will be in the starting lineup just like that. I mean, Anthony Belton's going to be a backup left tackle to start out. Trey Harris is going to be a day one start. Trey Harris is going to compete with Mike Williams for the slot receiver job. So Vlad McConkey is going to be number one. Quentin Johnston's going to be number two. I don't think Quentin Johnston should be handed the job outright. I think Johnston should have to compete with Trey Harris and Mike Williams for that number two job. And
very much
the loser of those three gets on the bench. The other two get to the runner-up gets to be the slot receiver, and whoever wins that competition should be the number two. We're in agreement, William, but because Quentin Johnston's a first-round pick, Johnston will probably remain the number two because he had the most receiving touchdowns on the team. McConkey had the most yards and receptions, but Johnston led the team in receiving touchdowns. So I think because Johnston led the team in receiving touchdowns and because he's a first-round pick, he'll probably remain the de facto number two, even though I think he should have to compete with Harrison Williams for that number two job. That's just my thought process.
He should, because, when he knows he's getting the ball, he is all out, full everything. He is going to absolutely score some touchdowns. His stats showed that. But when he's not getting the ball, he shows lack of effort. He's a step behind. You can watch him not take off, the line as fast. And so he should absolutely have to work for something, that would be the best way to bring out.
Yeah, and I know people are going to say Johnston ran all 30 routes in the route tree. Trey Harris only ran 10 out of 30 routes. That may be true, but Harris is better at breaking those 10 routes than Johnston is at breaking those 30 routes, even though he knows all of them. And he's also excellent at high pointing the football. I mean, that's the thing with Trey Harris.
Johnston's got stone hands too. Let's not forget that one.
Ozzie Trapillo went to the Bears. There are talks that Ozzie Trapillo is going to end up starting day one over. Ozzie Trapillo may end up starting day one over Braxton Jones. That's what the early speculation coming out of Bears camp is. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but early speculation is he will be the day one starter.
These offensive lines have to gel, and that's why you see him sliding pieces.
And Braxton Jones was a 3-year starter at left tackle. But that's the thing. The Bears let Charles Leno walk after his rookie. I think they extended him after his rookie deal, and then they let him walk after the contract was up, and then they got Braxton Jones to replace him. And that's the crazy part. They drafted 2 fifth-round left tackles, Charles Leno Jr. and Braxton Jones, and they sort of hit on both of those picks in a sense. But at the same time, Braxton Jones, even though he's been good, he hasn't been dominant enough to where he warrants that second contract. And, that was the same thing with Charles Leno Jr., but the Bears didn't care. They still overpaid Leno after his rookie deal, and I don't think Poles is going to make that mistake with Jones. He's going to...
Here's something about that thought process. Has Trapillo even gone to Chicago yet? Because a report I heard this morning was that some of these draft picks have not even reported their team facilities, and
yes, he has reported the facilities, and there is speculation he's going to start over. He's going to start over Braxton Jones. I don't believe it because I love his run blocking, and yes, the pass blocking strength, pass blocking footwork, and pass blocking is there. The problem is it's not there consistently from a technique standpoint. And if you're a rookie and the pass blocking strength, pass blocking footwork is there, but it's not there consistently from a technique standpoint, you probably need to sit and learn under Braxton Jones for a year. If he gets injured, you can come in and start and then be the guy from that point forward if you kick ass. But that's if you kick ass. If you don't kick...
My concern was that, as you report, because I've heard for some reason a lot of rookies did not show up to their teams early. So speculation on whether he could start would be, if he had shown up, that would have been way premature.
He has shown up and he's looked good, but at the same token, the pass blocking footwork and pass blocking strength is inconsistent on film. That's why I would not start him week 1. I would just let Jones start out. But if Trapillo comes in for an injured Braxton Jones and he kicks ass, he can be the left tackle from that point forward. And then we can just let Jones walk. But that would be my way of handling this. The Lions got Tate Ratledge. I love what the Lions did. I thought the Raiders reached on every pick outside of Ashton Ginty. Mike Green was a great pick for the Ravens. Great fit. I mean, everybody else liked Mike Green, so that's why this got an A+. The Broncos took R.J. Harvey at 60. Commanders took Trey Amos. I gave that a B. I gave the Bears a C for Shamar Turner because I had a 4th on Turner, and they got Grady Jarrett and Gervon Dexter. I mean, so I even Omar Norman Lott had the best pass rush win rate of any defensive tackle in the draft, and he's going to be playing next to Chris Jones. So I do think Omar Norman Lott was a great pickup for the Chiefs, and then Mukaba, the Eagles in round 2. But yeah, that does it for the first 2 rounds of this. I'll get through round 3 a little bit quicker, hopefully. But yeah, Xavier Watts was the big name in round 3, and William actually helped me with some of the write-ups on round 3. We'll get to those. The Chiefs took Ashton Gillott with the Titans pick, so Gillott's already calling Karlaftis a mentor as he's shown up for the Chiefs. And I had a 3rd on Gillott. Browns took Harold Fannin with the very next pick. So the Raiders got the only dry cornbread grade of the draft for Darian Porter. The Patriots got Kyle Williams. I found 12 different receivers that ran all 30 routes on the route tree. Kyle Williams was one of those 12 receivers, and the Patriots took him at pick 69. He could very easily be New England's number 1 by the end of the year. Isaac Tesla went to the Lions. I mean, Tesla, I wasn't a big fan of Tesla's tape, but Detroit's the one team where I could see him having an immediate impact because Dan Campbell's going to see a little bit of himself in Tesla as a football player. Because Campbell was a former tight end. There's also rumors Jamison Williams might get traded. This pick would get an F grade in most circumstances, but I just trust Brad Holmes here. I do have the Lions playing the Bengals in the Super Bowl. I trust Brad Holmes with Isaac Tesla here. Saints took Vernon Broughton. The Bills got Landon Jackson at 72. I love the Landon Jackson pick because he's going to be your number 4 defensive end. Remember, you got Epineza, Rosso, and Bosa as your number 1, 2, and 3 defensive ends. Jackson's going to be your number 4 defensive end and the backup to Gregory Rosso at left end, which is a role that I think suits him perfectly. Jets took Azaria Thomas to complement Sauce Gardner. He's going to replace DJ Reed. I gave him an A+ in man, an A+ in press, and A- in zone. The problem is he doesn't always lock eyes into his receivers. Williams saw some flaws with him at the Senior Bowl, too. I love the Nick Martin pick for San Francisco. Nick Martin was my number 2 outside linebacker behind Stutzman and number 2 middle linebacker, and he's taking key winners.
Yeah, and the 49ers picks, the top 3 or 4 picks, I knew exactly, what positions those picks were going to be. It just depended on the order of the players on their draft board, and who was louder, Shanahan or Lynch. And, so I do like that pick. And
Siobhan Rebel went to Dallas later. I love the Siobhan Rebel pick, but here's the thing. The Cowboys have Trevon Diggs as their number 1 corner. Deron Bland is their boundary. Israel Mukuamu's the nickel at the moment. Kalen Carson's the dime corner, and Rebel's the quarter corner. Honestly, I would start Carson or Rebel at nickel over Mukuamu. I don't think Mukuamu's anything special. And I think both Carson and Rebel have more upside than him. We saw what Carson could do in relief of Bland, and he was quite effective. And Rebel's a guy who was a preseason first-round pick before his injury. So, I mean, honestly, I think Dallas, by playing Mukuamu at nickel, they're screwing this up. They're screwing up their ability to get the most out of the secondary. But they have a lot of depth in their cornerback room. Princely Umanian's going to be... that's the thing with Carolina. I do love Nick Scort in round 2 and Princely Umanian in round 3. But the thing is, the Panthers have to get... And yeah, the Panthers, I gave them an A for McMillan, an A+ for the edge rushers, because edge rusher was a bigger need for them. If Scorton and Umanian start right away, they could challenge Tampa for the division. And if they don't, because right now, DJ Wanham and Jadeveon Clowney are the 2 projected starters at outside linebacker. If those guys start over Scorton and Umanian, we might just see more of the same from Carolina, where their offense, where they have to rely on their offense to win games. But if Scorton and Umanian, if both of them can become starters as rookies, whenever those two take over for Wanham and Clowney, I think they're going to challenge Tampa. But I'd still have to pick Tampa at this point and probably next year, because Tampa Bay is my Super Bowl 61 pick at the moment. But the Panthers are getting closer to where they could legitimately establish themselves as the de facto challenger to Tampa. A lot of that does depend on how much confidence you have in Bryce Young. I have a lot of confidence in Bryce Young. He pushed both Mahomes and Jalen Hurts to the limit at home. He had a higher passer rating than Stroud in the final 3 games. But we'll see. We really will find out what we're getting with Bryce Young in year 3.
The Panthers have always been a team that were defined by their defensive line all the way back to 96 and 3-4.
Only difference is they moved from a 43 defense under John Fox to a 34 defense, even when Julius Peppers was there late in his career. And they've been the 34 defense ever since. Cardinals got another 34 defensive lineman in Jordan Birch. Texans got Jalen Noel. I love the Jalen Noel pick at 79. And now you add another weapon for Stroud. Justin Wally, the Colts at 80, was a great pick too. The Colts are one of these teams that I believe I gave the Colts an A+ in round 1. I gave them an A+ in round 2 when they drafted JT Tuimoloau, because the Colts took JT Tuimoloau. And the thought process was, Kwity Paye, Samson Ekubom, Tyquan Lewis are all UFAs in 2026. So Leatu Latu and JT Tuimoloau would be your edge rushers at right end and left end. That was the thought process in round 2. In round 3, they went Wally. They've got Charvarius Ward. They've got Juju Brents, Jalen Jones, and Justin Wally. But it sounds like Brents, Jalen Jones, and Justin Wally are all competing for that number 2 boundary corner job next across from Charvarius Ward on the outside, and Kenny Moore's going to remain on the inside at nickel. And the 2 losers of that competition will be the bench players at dime and nickel corner. So that is the thought process with Justin Wally. The Bengals took Dylan Fairchild with the very next pick. So, yeah. But, I mean, I had Justin Wally in round 5 of my mock. I took him in the group mock, but I just love the fit. I felt like the Colts had to draft a corner at some point, and they got a good one. So I think they got a good one in round 3 here. Bengals took Dylan Fairchild. I love the Dylan Fairchild pick for the Bengals because I think his ceiling's higher than Cordell Volson's. The Titans took Kevin Winston Jr. I thought that was a reach. I did not like the Caleb Johnson pick, but Joey hated the fact that Caleb Johnson went to the Steelers. I just didn't like the pick in general. Buccaneers took Jacob Parrish. I thought this was the first reach by Tampa. Noel Williams went to the Chiefs at 85. He is very good on special teams, and he could also potentially be your number 2 corner down the road. But he's going to be the cornerback. He's going to be the number 5 corner. Jalen Watson's the dime corner. Jamari Connor's your nickel. Williams is listed as a backup to Christian Fulton, so you don't have to worry about starting him until 2027. You have McDuffie. 2027 is when Trent McDuffie's 5th-year tender expires if you don't re-sign him. Fulton becomes a UFA in 2027 as well, and Jamari Connor also becomes a UFA in 2027 after his rookie deal. So you can keep McDuffie, Fulton, and Connor as your top 3 corners for the next 2 years and ease Williams in. I do think that is somewhat advantageous as far as Noel Williams, the development goes, that he led the country in interceptions and now he's on the Chiefs. So, and he can also play special teams. So the fact that the Chiefs can ease him in, that is very advantageous for Kansas City. I gave the Chargers an A- for Jamari Caldwell. I thought Deion Walker and Nazir Stackhouse may have been better fits, but those were my only 2 nose tackles graded above Caldwell. So I gave the Chargers an A-. The Packers, I gave them a D for saving Williams. I don't think either of TCU's receivers are going to be I gave the Jags a B+ for Caleb Ransaw because Caleb Ransaw can play corner, strong safety, free safety. He also lined up as a 3rd edge rusher on Tulane, and he's the best blitzing corner in the entire draft. So as far as I can understand Ken LeBlanc's thought process for picking him in the group mock. I really can, Joey, because Ransaw, he did bring a lot to the table. He's also got experience as a punt returner on special teams. If he can get his coverage on par with his versatility and speed, I think he could be a starter. I think there's a chance he could have cracked the second round. He's a project, but he's a project that, you know, he could end up being one of the steals of this draft. I gave the pick a B+.
I think we underestimate that there are a lot of projects in this draft, and there's a lot of talent in this draft. And that's why I said specifically at quarterback that this is a better than you think class. And I said that not because they were going to be like immediate starters or immediate.
I had 7 quarterbacks with starter potential. The problem is, outside of Cam Ward, there's not another guy that's a day one starter.
Yeah,
that's the only problem.
That's the thing. And that's
yours.
That's not just the quarterbacks, but that's the entire draft. This is a potential waste draft.
Yeah, the only quarterbacks I had backup grades on were Riley Leonard, Tyler Show, and Kyle McCord. I had starter grades on Gabriel for potential. These are not guys who are going to be day one starters, but for potential alone, I had starter grades on Shadur, Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, and Dylan Gabriel, and Will Howard. So that should tell you all you need to know. And I do have 4 quarterbacks in my first round for next year, but I'll get to that when we get to the Shadur pick in round 5. My Shadur write-up was probably my lengthiest write-up.
Point out that this was a potential guy with potential at this point.
I think Ransom could be a nickel corner.
You can do that, and nobody's going to bat an eye.
I think Ransom could be a nickel corner down the road. The problem is he'll never be more than a nickel corner in Jacksonville because they have Tyson Campbell and they drafted Travis Hunter at 2. So if Hunter plays at corner and receiver in Jacksonville, then Ransom's looking at a nickel role at best, even if he works his way into the starting lineup. That's really all he would be able to do there.
Here's the interesting point for that. I think this is why Jacksonville drafted. I did a lot of scouting and listened to a lot of former pros on Hunter. They said because he's going to also be playing receiver, probably starting at receiver, especially with Jacksonville, they may put him as a robber. In that case, it would be basically a cover 3 with Hunter just doing what Hunter does.
But I've heard Hunter's going to play boundary corner and secondary receiver next to Brian Thomas. I've heard he's going to play both positions and be an every down player at both positions.
I would advise against that, but I could see it happening.
I just think Hunter's a much better corner than he is a receiver. Much better corner than he is a receiver. But that's just my opinion on the situation. We'll see how that unfolds.
The thing with him, it's all about his ball skills. How do you want to use his ball skills? Because his ball skills are elite all time. Not elite this year, elite all time.
I agree with that. There's only one player I have graded higher than Travis Hunter in the entire 2025 draft class, and that's Cooper Flagg in the NBA draft. I think Hunter's the best player in the NFL draft by far and away this year. But it's very close between Flagg and Hunter, and I'll get into that debate in a few weeks when we.
Yeah, that's not a debate for now. It's just I'm just trying to think of why the Jacksonville Jaguars would make this pick in this situation, because it's not a desperate situation. It is a potential situation, as we said, but at the same time. He's better at blitzing. He's better at blitzing than Travis Hunter. And if Travis Hunter plays cornerback in addition to receiver, they probably just want him to cover. They don't want him to blitz or do anything. They want him to stop the run if the running back comes his way, but they mainly want him to cover and stop the run. They don't want him to blitz or worry about blitzing. That's probably the thought process there. Wyatt Milam, West Virginia left tackle. He might move inside to guard or center, but he's basically going to be a 6th man on the offensive line. Is it a reach in terms of value? But I think it's a better selection than Caleb Ransom. But I gave Ransom a B+ and an A- in my defense. Josiah Stewart
replaces Michael Hoke as the backup right outside linebacker. Ravens got an A+ for Emory Jones at 91. Then Milroe went 92. This is a write-up William did. And yeah, did I forget to put a second F in off season, or is that that's me, William? I don't think you screwed that up. I think I screwed that up. And even if you did screw that up, it's my responsibility to take accountability for that as the CEO of this company, as the founder of Draftopia. It is 1000% my responsibility.
No worries.
Joey, before you endorse me or roast me, I just want to take responsibility briefly before you. Okay.
That was a nice brief responsibility, but I do want to point out the NFL season is already underway.
Sam Howell figures to be the odd man out. You were right about that. They actually traded him to the Vikings on day 3. Jonas Sanker went to the Saints. I gave that a B grade. I think, I only put one breaking line. Yeah, I only put one breaking line below the Saints pick. I usually put 2 breaking lines, 2 enter keys before each pick. So I just noticed that, and I figured I got to fix that. And I did. So Jonas Sanker. Oh, are you kidding me? I put 2 breaking lines. Come on. Don't make me reload this thing twice. I swear I put... Okay. All right, now it's reloading me to 71 because I decided to be a jerk. The Saints are making me reload the page. I really don't like the way the Saints are behaving right now, but hey.
Yeah, me neither. Actually, no. Free Jay Kaner.
Get kicked off when you're a jerk, but at the same time, right now, when it comes to the Saints deserve you to be a jerk for them.
I mean, they took Tyler Show. I gave that an F grade. I gave them a B grade for Jonas Sanker. But at the same token, he's going to be sitting behind Justin Reed. They have Tyrann Mathieu in a contract year. I think they should have drafted a free safety that they can learn under Honey Badger and then come in as a replacement, because you signed Reed to a multi-year deal. You didn't extend Mathieu, and he's probably on his way out. I think Sanker's a pure strong safety. I don't see him playing free safety. I think he's a pure strong safety. So we'll see. But he's a good number 3 safety. The Browns took Gabriel. I did give this a B grade. Just a B grade. And Gabriel punched his ticket. Cleveland drafted a 3rd string.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, this class looks to have much more.
I want to ask a question to first of all to you guys, because this is something, I wasn't as high on Gabriel. But Gabriel is a 6 years high-level competition. He's accurate, and he may know how to play the quarterback position better as well, or better than anybody else in this draft. But the question I want to ask you guys is, if he was 6'1" or 6'2", would he be a top 5 draft pick this year if he was taller?
Honestly, I don't know if he would be. That's the thing. But the Browns brought him in for a private workout the day before Shedeur Sanders had his pro day. So.
Yeah, and I don't see that. He needs a stronger arm, and of course, if he were that tall, he would be. But, he went to UCF. That's kind of where quarterbacks were when you don't have a chance to go anywhere else. He had to work his way up through all of that. So, no, I definitely don't see, the small school thing, the journeyman thing, and college being worthy of a first-round pick, especially when it was 6 years, So you're obviously – that's a lot of wear and tear.
And then Jared Wilson went to New England at 95. He could take over for Garrett Bradbury at center next year when Bradbury's contract runs out. And then Xavier Watts was a very good pick at 96. Probably my favorite overall pick in round. I don't think Atlanta did enough to challenge in this division. They lost Drew Dahlman at center. They didn't draft a center. And they also need a number 2 corner next to AJ Terrell, and they didn't get one in this draft. They're trusting Mike Hughes, who's a good nickel, who's an okay nickel corner, but he was a terrible nickel corner in Kansas City to be their number 2 corner for the second year in a row. They're trusting him. I don't think that was a wise decision. I think that'll come back to bite Atlanta. They will be in a lot of shootouts where they will have to rely on Penix and the rookie edge rushers they drafted and Watts to win them games, William, because they don't have that number 2 corner. Those rookies and Penix are going to have to be the reason they win a lot of these games. Jalen Smith to the Texans, Caleb Rogers. I did like the Charles Grant pick at 99. A lot of teams whiffed on their comp picks, in my opinion, in the 3rd round. So it is what it is. On to round 4. Deion Walker. Jaguars took Tootin. I gave the Giants an A+ for Cam Scatebo. I think he can beat out Tyrone Tracy, Singletary, and Eric Gray and be a day 1 starter. I gave Craig Woodson an A+ because it's a depth pick. You're getting him for depth behind Jabril Peppers and Kyle Duggar. I gave the Jags a B for Jack Kaiser. I do like the value, though. Deion Walker at 109. Very good value for Buffalo. I thought that was the best overall pick of round 4, the headline player. Saints got Danny Stutzman in round 4. That's a great pick, too, because they've got Pete Werner. They've got Demario Davis as starters. He can learn under those guys. You can play him situationally as a Sam linebacker, too. So if you run a 43 and only play 2 corners, you can play him as a Sam linebacker on running plays situationally, 1st and 2nd down, get his feet wet. Yeah. So there's things you can do with Stutzman, even though he's probably not going to be if the Saints run a nickel defense, he's going to be a bench player. But if the Saints run a 4-3 and they only have 2 defensive backs, I could see Stutzman getting his feet wet at Sam linebacker situationally on those.
I would have actually preferred Stutzman over Martin to the Niners, but I like the Martin pick, but Stutzman is the only one that I would actually.
Stutzman and Martin were my 1 and 2 linebackers. They were both my 1 and 2 middle linebackers in my final rankings. CJ West, I gave this a C grade. San Francisco needed a defensive tackle, but CJ West is not a guy that, like Howard Cross the third out of Notre Dame or Riley Mills, he's not a guy who's just going to take the job from Jordan Elliott. He's a guy who's going to push Elliott, but ultimately lose out to Elliott. So I don't think the Niners necessarily improved both defensive tackle spots.
No, they didn't.
They only improved one spot and added depth at another for insurance purposes.
Yeah. I didn't like the CJ West thing, he didn't show a whole lot of production. And
I love the 49ers' first 3 picks, but after that, it felt like their draft was all downhill after that.
And that's kind of typical Shanahan Lynch draft, for some reason. They try to outsmart themselves, or they just
some teams after the first 3 rounds. Some teams after the first 3 rounds, instead of getting the best value pick on their board, they look for a player who's a consensus 4th round prospect because they want to be able to sign that player easily, pay them less money, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And that's just a scarce thought process. That's not an abundant thought process. That's a scarce.
Set them on the team instead of have them in there, trying to push something, trying to, feel that they, have that chip on their shoulder. Just have that backup. That's depth. That's a smooth transition.
I gave the Panthers a C for Trevor Etienne. Miles Sanders is gone. Jonathan Brooks is going to miss next season. You need a temporary change of pace guy behind Chuba Hubbard. That's what Etienne's going to be as a rookie. But if he sucks, he's probably going to be a 3rd stringer. The Cardinals took Cody Simon. I did give this an A+, but Mac Wilson and Akeem Davis-Gaither are going to start. Simon's going to be a depth player behind those 2. But, you have depth at that spot. I love the Jarquez Hunter pick for the Rams. Now you have a 3rd running back to complement Kyron Williams and Blake Corum. And even if you extend Kyron Williams, you have 2 other decent running backs on rookie deals. And if you let Williams walk, you could look at Corum or Hunter starting. But Kyron's been so consistent. I honestly think the Rams are going to try to extend him if they have any cap space once they get their rookie signed. I just don't see the Rams because that's the thing. I think Puka Nacua was a 2023 5th round pick and Kyron Williams was a 22 5th round pick. I don't see the Rams not extending Kyron Williams with how consistent he's been the last few years. And then the Falcons took Billy Bowman Jr. as another safety for depth, and I pointed out
I
how
know you love that
the
too.
Falcons could buy out Jesse Bates III and move Watts to free safety. And if they do that, then we could see Bowman start next year. And then the Bengals took Barrett Carter. They are going to move on from Pratt, but they also lost Akeem Davis-Gaither. So the thought process might be, let's get a Will and a Sam linebacker, so we have personnel for a 43 as well as a 4-2-5. I gave the Titans an A for Gunnar Helm, not an A+. I mean, Gadsden, Luke Lakey, and Mitchell Evans were all still on the board. I did have a 4th on Gunnar Helm, and I do like his upside more than Chigoziem Okonkwo, who's in the final year of his rookie deal with the Titans. I do like the pick more, but at the same
he's a solid player, but he's not overly athletic. I mean, but definitely solid. You know, watched him play well with viewers, and I mean,
and with Okonkwo, I mean, I like Okonkwo on a rookie deal, but he's not a guy I'd extend, and I think Gunnar Helm is more upside long term. So you can just bring him in to replace Okonkwo after this year and reload at tight end. You're seeing a lot of teams do that in this draft. David Walker, Central Arkansas edge rusher to the Panthers. Lathan Ransom, I mocked him to the Panthers in round 5, but he's going to be a day 1 starter next to Trayvon Moehrig. I really like that pick. Jack Sawyer's Steeler. So Pittsburgh now has Highsmith and Watt as their starters. Nick Herbig and Sawyer are the backups.
that is a Steelers name all day long, Jack Sawyer.
Yeah. The Colts took Jalen Travis at 127. I had a 3rd round grade on Jalen Travis. And Bernard Raymond's in a contract year. Braden Smith is a player you can buy out to save cap space. Travis will be a swing tackle as a rookie, but he could get a bigger role if he does well in relief of Raymond or Smith. So that's something to keep an eye on. Jalen Lane, but Jalen Lane. Yeah, I saved it, but it's not bolded. That's the problem. I need the pick to be bolded, and I don't want to have to. Okay, good. It's bolded. I don't have to scroll down. Teddy Buchanan went to the Ravens. I gave that a C-. I really don't see him as a starter. He's going to be a backup for depth behind Roquan Smith and Trent Simpson. Malachi Moore, love that pick for the Jets. I think he could be a day 1 starter at free safety. I had a 2nd round grade on Malachi Moore. I love the Quincy Riley pick for New Orleans. He could be their nickel corner right out of the gate. Because right now they brought back Isaac Yiadom from San Francisco, but they have Kool-Aid McKinstry. They have Alontae Taylor. Now you had Riley. Now you have 4 corners on rookie deals. And 3 corners on rookie deals, and Taylor, McKinstry, and Riley. So I really like that pick for New Orleans. Bears take a right outside linebacker after giving TJ Edwards a 2-3-year extension. That's an F. The Chiefs took Jalen Royals in the 4th round. So Jalen Royals probably going to start out as a backup, but as soon as Marquez Brown, Rashee Rice, or Worthy gets injured, or if Rice goes to trial and gets suspended, you could see a situation where Jalen Royals takes his job. And then the Chiefs just move on from Rashee Rice if Jalen Royals dominates. Q Robinson, the Raiders got Tonka Hemingway. I like that value in the 4th round. The Titans took Alec Aomanor. Most of an A+ on this, but he had 21 drops in 19 minutes. Even if he runs all 30 routes in the route tree, if you have 21 drops in 19 minutes, that is a little bit concerning. Joshua Farmer as a nose tackle. I think he could beat out Kyrus Tonga for the nose tackle job. Really good value pick by New England. And then Jordan Watkins to San Francisco to end round 4. I love this pick, William. Watkins reminded me of Tyreek Hill when I watched this Ole Miss tape. And I believe he's faster than Elijah Moore. I believe he made Dart look better than he actually is. So
and Elijah Moore, I really liked, coming out of Ole Miss, and I thought maybe the Niners should pursue signing him. Apparently, he wanted a ton of money, though.
I was not high on Elijah Moore, but he keeps getting chances because he did well because of his athletic.
He flashes. He has just a little tiny bit of Steve Smith in him, the way he runs, and It's
Yeah, but he's not a
one of those
route
things
tree
where
guy.
it's potential.
But he's a very fast workout warrior.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got through the first 4 rounds. Finally,
I don't really want too much money.
Here's something interesting about the Elijah Moore signing that affects the Bills. It's the Browns placed a very rarely used unrestricted free agent signing call on him, which would meant he would have had to sign immediately. And they did it within a week of the first, because he had to sign before the first, or he could not sign anywhere else except for Cleveland. It is a tag I had to look at because it hadn't been used in like 30 years.
yeah.
So it was I think that was, I'm not sure if you can call that petty or
The Bills,
anger or what it was, but it may have helped the Bills one way or the other because it forced Elijah Moore's hand.
well, the Bills have they gave Khalil Shakir a 3 or 4 year extension. They still have Keon Coleman on a rookie deal. They let Mac Hollins walk, but I think they brought in Josh Palmer from the Chargers. So they have Shakir, they have Palmer, and they have I think what you're going to see is Elijah Moore and Curtis Samuel are going to be competing for the number 4 receiver job and the number 1 backup spot on Buffalo's depth chart. That's
like
what
Moore.
I believe is going to happen in camp.
I like Moore right there.
But if Coleman regresses, that is possible one of those 2 steps in and takes the job.
Not, man.
I just find it interesting that they use that some obscure.
Why are we spending more than 5 minutes talking about a number 4, number 5 receiver on the Bills? I know it's an interesting signing, but
I don't know. It's just the rule caught me. Because
okay.
The rule is something obscure.
We're on round 5. Just looking at some of the picks here. Vikings reached. I gave the Panthers a B for Cam Jackson out of Florida. I like that fit. Seahawks got an A for Riley Mills. The problem is he is going to play. He's going to be either a backup nose tackle or a backup 5 technique in Seattle. He's not really going to get a chance to play. The Browns, they traded up to Shadur Sanders. I mean, I have a higher ceiling grade on Shadur Sanders than any of the 2026 quarterbacks at the moment. I have an 80. I have a 91 on Aller. I have a 92 on Klubnik for potential. I have an 89 on Arch Manning and Garrett Nussmeier for potential. Do I think Arch Manning can develop into a 99 max prospect like Elway, Peyton Manning, Luck, Lawrence, Caleb Williams? Yes, but he has to play the next 3 years at Texas. Not the next year, not the next 2 years, the next 3 years. Otherwise, I don't think he enters that tier, Joey. I don't. Because he only has 90 reps. That's a very limited count.
I agree. I agree 100%. And the thing is, I think Shadur Sanders is a highly talented prospect that got a lot of bad advice, a lot of outdated advice from his dad, didn't hire an agent, and he went from somebody who would probably be taken in the 2nd round to the most highly talked about story of the draft because he took that advice. And what I know, 100%, that goes in Cleveland, he's already won over the hearts and minds of Cleveland fans. He's been at the school talking, he's been working out. There's only a couple days, and he has the highest selling jersey among rookies. As of this morning, because I just looked it up, period.
I don't think Shadur's going to reach his potential, but my potential grade on Shadur is 93 out of 99. So if he does reach his potential, that's Pro Bowl territory. Not a blue chip prospect, but that is Pro Bowl territory if he reaches his potential. And I don't think the guys in 2026 have the upside that Shadur has. Could they develop that as we get into next season? Yes. But right now, I don't think they have the upside Shadur has. But I do think the quarterbacks in next year's draft have higher floors, Joey. I think the quarterbacks in next year's draft have higher floors than Shadur. I don't think their ceilings are higher, though.
Before I'm here, man.
You know why? is Kenny Pickett, from what I heard, is probably going to be the odd man out. That means
I heard he's going to be the week 1 starter. Flacco's going to be the odd man out.
That's local media has been. They've been doing that since before the draft. Okay, people love Kenny Pickett because he's from Ohio. From the Ohio.
I don't think it's just that. Flacco was horrible in the relief of Anthony Richardson last year against the Vikings that he got benched after 1 game.
He wasn't horrible. He was what he was.
He was horrible against the Vikings, okay? There's a reason he got benched for Richardson after 1 game. I disagree, but to your point, there is a reason.
The big thing is, this is going to be why I say this is amazing for both guys. You have 2 guys Kevin Stefanski loves. Now, I know you like body language, Chris. This is your deal. That's why I'm bringing this up. Kevin Stefanski does the same thing I do a lot of times. When I love something, I don't want people to know I love it. His attacks were slow, but they were deliberate.
I also think that Haslam wanted the Browns to draft Shedeur.
I'm doing something that you love.
Okay.
I'm doing something you love right now.
All right.
You know, before I take off, man.
William wants to say something, Joey. Can William say something? I'm not going to say anything. Can William say something? He wants to say something.
All right, man. You know, before I take off, you know, I evaluated Shedeur over, 3 seasons. It was 3 or 4 evaluations. I had a weekly one game. The one thing that I suggested was, can he get away from his dad? And that has a lot to do with what is going on and just the attitude that his father has instilled into him. And I mean, as a player, he has a great arm, obviously good ball placement, good accuracy, just down the line, but he is still not that good when, he drops back to throw the ball. I see him struggling to read defenses. I see him, doing things, freezing up, and I see him taking sacks, and which also taking those sacks pads his completion percentage and cuts down on interceptions, from throwing it away or, throwing picks or throwing into coverage and the possibility of throwing picks. I had a 5th round grade on Shedeur, and I didn't think the league was actually going to do it because obviously he was going to be overdrafted, or that's what all the signs were pointing towards. The NFL hasn't, I feel he was actually picked in the right spot, for his talent level and for his, whatever you want to call it, entitledness. I don't know. I don't want to, get too much on the bad side there, but it's something, it's not his fault, what is going on. But I really hope that he can succeed in this league. But, the Browns are a place where quarterbacks go to die. They're quarterback killers, man. So there's that.
Yeah, and the only quarterback in 2026 that has the same potential grade as Shedeur Sanders right now is Carson Beck, and I would argue his floor is lower than Shedeur Sanders, Joey. Maybe we're in disagreement on that, but I would argue Carson Beck's floor, where he is right now, is lower than Shedeur Sanders.
We agree 100% on that. My big thing is because, and I brought this up because I think this was a Kevin Stefanski power play. If you look at the body language and what I was just saying, a slight smirk that was hard to detect, a harder clap. Look at the people, 2 people didn't like it. Stefanski literally loved it. You can tell by the body language.
Well, we had a different thought, William and I. We had a different thought on that quickly. Our thought was this was a Jimmy Haslam pick. The Deshaun Watson thing was a Jimmy Haslam decision. I think this was a Jimmy Haslam decision because the coaches and the GM did not look happy initially when he was picked.
Now, Kevin Stefanski did look happy, but Kevin Stefanski was trying to hide it, and he did a very good job. If I didn't do the same thing with my face, and such, if I didn't have the same emotion, I wouldn't have picked it up. I had to watch twice. Say,
Okay.
I did the same thing when I'm in that situation.
All right.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have picked it up. But I think this was a Kevin Stefanski being, above Barry when it comes to influence. They let Larry do his job, but if Stefanski wants to override, which he doesn't do often, he does. I think this was Stefanski saying, I want this quarterback, and I want this quarterback. You don't want this quarterback. I'm going over your head. I'm getting my second quarterback, and we're going to have them battle it out like a couple freaking gladiators and seeing who survives. I think that's what Stefanski. I think this was a Stefanski pick, and he may have gone over to Jimmy and said, Jimmy, I want this. And Jimmy may have gone to Barry to make this happen. But this will, based on body language, like this was Stefanski pulling weight.
All right.
Just,
Um,
I mean, I wanted to, if it doesn't mean anything, I just wanted to play it in your guys' mind.
Sounds good. I'm going to get on to some other picks. Swinson went to New England at 146. I'm not high on Swinson, but there were a lot of people that had him in the top 100. And if Keon White stays at 5 technique, there is a chance Swinson could be a day 1 starter. Ty Hamilton, he's a guy who could push for a day 1 starter role as a nose tackle on the Rams. Jason Marshall Jr., he could end up being a day 1 starter where he has to be rushed in because they don't have a corner next to Jalen Ramsey at the moment. DJ Giddens is a really good change of pace back for the Colts. I like the Jalen Rivers pick for the Bengals. I thought that was a great pick. I like the Jeffrey Bossa pick for depth at middle linebacker, too. And, Smail Mondon Jr., middle linebacker to Georgia, I gave that an A+ for the Eagles. That was my only A+ since the first round. Panthers took Mitchell Evans. I love the Mitchell Evans pick for Carolina because now you have Jatavian Sanders and Mitchell Evans. Gadsden went to the Chargers. Rondre Gadsden. Torrey Horton went to Seattle. I love the Torrey Horton pick for Seattle because now you have him. I think he's got a shot of winning the slot receiver job next to Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith-Njigba. Drew Kendall went to the Eagles behind Cam Jurgens. Before I get to round 7, I know William has to go in a second. Do you have anything you want to say on Quinn Ewers before we get to round 6 and I go through these picks in depth?
I loved the Quinn Ewers pick, how Curtis Rourke went 4 picks before him. But I feel that's because the 49ers had Quinn much higher on the board and saw him with starter potential and didn't want to, damage what they have going between Purdy and Mac Jones, even though I'm not high on Mac Jones. But
sometimes
Ewers,
teams
I'm
draft
very
for
high on.
value over upside. If Kyle Shanahan wants to keep Purdy as the starter and Mac Jones as the backup, drafting Curtis Rourke is the best way to do that.
Exactly. And I definitely agree with that, and I feel that Quinn Ewers is going to take over in Miami sooner than later, whether it be,
he's got to compete
Dolphins
with Zach Wilson for the
Tua.
backup quarterback gig, but I actually think that's a competition he can win. But that's going to be one of the preseason battles.
He can definitely win it. Zach just has the experience behind him, but Ewers also showed just how strong of a will he had at Texas, staying there with Arch Manning behind him and remaining the starter, going through an oblique injury that no one's talking about, that they were saying, oh yeah, towards the end of the season. Well, he was beat up towards the end of the season, and I feel that Quinn Ewers, he's definitely a starter in this league. He is everything that I look for in a quarterback, and I mean, I'm glad to see he is in that vertical offense. Those receivers are going to have a hard time outrunning his arm, and it's just going to maximize what Mike McDaniels has going down there. And it's going to open up. It's going to open up a whole new, downfield game that they haven't seen or haven't realized yet with the Dolphins and the speed that they have between Devon Achane. You know, he can line up anywhere, and you know, Jalen Waddle, and it's just
I
love
don't
him
know
down there
if
with that
Quinn Ewers is
concept.
going to get an opportunity to play as a rookie like Skylar Thompson did, but if he does, I feel like he's a guy who can take that job from Tua and not give it
Yeah.
back.
Exactly. Once he gets on the field, it's going to be very hard to get him off the field.
Yeah.
So
The Cardinals,
like
they
to
got
say that
Denzel
before I
Burke
take
at
off, guys.
174, but I'll wait until Denzel Burke. I had Denzel Burke in round 2, so Will Johnson, Denzel Burke. Seahawks took a Robbie Outsis, and then the Jets took Luke Kandra at 176. I love this
I want to
pick.
give something to Wayne's point here. I want to give something to Wayne's point. And that's, we look and we see how many players in the NFL that are late round picks over the years have been given an opportunity because of injury or because of whatever else, and never given the job back. I mean, Drew Bledsoe is the number 4 or 5 quarterback in the NFL. We just think that Tom Brady gets the job, Drew Bledsoe doesn't win it back.
He does get to play in relief of Brady in the AFC Championship, but that was because Brady was injured, not because.
Yeah, exactly. One of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL does not get his job back after injury. Let that sink in.
Yeah, and people want to talk about the Madden curse. I think the backyard football curse is worse than the Madden curse because Steve Young got a career-ending injury the year he was on the first backyard football computer game. Bledsoe was on the cover of Backyard Football the year Brady took his job. So if you want to rant about the Madden curse, I'm just going to bring up the backyard football curse to counteract your argument.
Well, yeah, because you got 2 top 5 NFL quarterbacks who got injured at the beginning on the cover and didn't get their job back. So, yeah, it's like that is a legitimate argument. But at the same time, do not discount these guys. Tell me, just because Joe Flacco, 30 years old, Shaquille Sanders, top-selling rookie quarterback jersey in the NFL right now. Flacco goes down, and Shaquille gets in. It's unlikely, but what happens is he blows it up. Flacco's out.
I think they're going to keep all 4 quarterbacks. I think they're going to keep all 4 quarterbacks on the opening day roster.
All right. Thanks, guys. I've got to bail. Thanks for having me. Good talking with you guys.
We appreciate having you on, William. It was fun.
Yes, sir. It's the first time that I got to talk about the draft since I've been holding in my words. I haven't written much. And, you know, I feel that, like earlier, I was saying we're solid into the point on the first round.
I think we're going to see Cam Ward and one other quarterback get a second contract. One other quarterback from this draft. I don't know who it's going to be, but my prediction is it's going to be one of the day 3 guys. If it's not Milroe, it's going to be one of the day 3 guys, whether it's Shadur, Will Howard with Pittsburgh, or Quinn Ewers with Miami. I think it's going to be one of those 3. I don't know which one of those 3 it'll end up being, but
that was Milroe's mistake.
It could be Milroe too. I mean, they can buy out Darnold after this year if Darnold sucks and Milroe just dominates as a rookie, or Milroe shows enough promise that he's the guy moving forward. Seattle's in a very advantageous position.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, I mean, Milroe, like I said, he should stay that extra year, but, you know, he can still develop and he can still get that done right. You know, I mean, he's got the mindset. He loves football and high character, smart guy.
Even if even if I have 7 quarterbacks with starter potential, I only think there's one day 1 starter in Cam Ward. And I think out of the other 6 quarterbacks, only one of those 6 will get a second contract. But the other 6 will all get an opportunity to play. And I think we could see as many as 3 day 3 rookies end up starting this year. We saw 2 when Skylar Thompson and Brock Purdy were rookies. I think we could see 3 with Ewers, Shadur, and Will Howard all potentially starting games in 2025 this season.
All right. I'm going to bail, guys. Have a good one.
William, we love having you. I love hearing your opinion. You're always informative. Have a great day, man.
Enjoy your day, William. That was William Yanish from Under the Bleachers. But But you want to add to that quarterback rant I was discussing briefly before I get to the Luke Kandra pick at the end of round 5? Because I do believe we will see Ward and one other rookie get a second contract. I don't know which rookie it'll be, but
I slightly disagree with you. Slightly. I think Shedeur Sanders gets a second contract, and that should be no surprise to anybody. I've been saying Shedeur Sanders be a star for 2 years. But I also think, after careful consideration, that I do think Dylan Gabriel may get a second contract, just not with the Browns. Let that sink in. Just not with the Browns.
yeah, but I'm just referring to second contracts with the teams that draft them. I mean,
yeah, that's cool. I was just thinking,
I think Gabriel would get a second contract, but it would be either a Mac Jones type situation. It wouldn't be like with the team that drafted him. Because I think there are quarterbacks in this draft that will get second contracts, just not with the team that drafted them. I think Ward and one other quarterback, whether it's Shedeur, Milroe, Will Howard, or
the biggest flop, I think, amongst the quarterbacks is going to be Tyler Shough.
I agree. Tyler Shough will be the biggest flop. But the crazy thing is he has the third best odds of winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. Right now, Ashton Jinty's number 1, Travis Hunter's number 2 in Offensive Rookie of the Year. Tyler Shough is number 3. He's the third best favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, according to Vegas. Vegas has him as the third best rookie to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Third best odds. They're giving Tyler Shough the third best odds to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. I just think that is laughably bad by Vegas.
It's not even laughable. It's not even laughable. I would put more money on Shedeur Sanders starting 10 games this year, which I don't think is going to happen, than I would on Tyler Shough getting the Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Is it like the South Park episode where they have the chicken with its head cut off running around with the wheel, the economy wheel? That's kind of what I feel like the Saints are going to be with Tyler Shough as their starting quarterback.
Chris, I think sometimes you wait for William to leave to pull this stuff because you know this is going to set me off a little bit, and you're going to get a chuckle out of it.
That's true.
Sometimes I think you just set this up to where, hey, William's going, let's put up the second absurd and let's see what Joey does with it. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
And this is one of those absurd things that Vegas is doing to get some fucking money from a bunch of idiots who are willing to do it. Would I vote for that? Would I put money on that? Yes. But you know when I'm going to put money on it? When it's freaking undeniable that he's not going to do it, I'll put $1 on it.
Yeah, Luke Kandra went to the Jets.
I might have an outside chance, so what's $1 to anybody?
I do love the Luke Kandra pick for the Jets for the final 5th round pick because Elijah Vera Tucker, final year of his rookie deal. If they do not want to extend him after the 5th year tender, you can let him walk and just reload with Luke Kandra at right guard. And he'll have that year of experience learning under Vera Tucker this season.
Now, here's a serious question. What was the most exciting part of the draft? I think the most exciting parts of the draft was round 3 through 6.
Well, we're going to get to round 6 because I got up to pick 180 on the live stream.
I'm just taking excitement level. Just excitement level.
Well, I thought the whole draft in general was exciting. I would argue round 7 was more exciting than round 6. That's just my personal opinion. But heading into round 6, there were 6 teams with an A+ grade on every single pick. The Cincinnati Bengals, the Detroit Lions, the Kansas City Chiefs, the New England Patriots, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Arizona Cardinals. 2 of those teams dropped the ball in round 6. Only 1 of those teams dropped the ball in round 7. So, and Devin Neal was the headline cover player for round 6. But the Bills kicked off round 6 with Dorian Strong. And I love Dorian Strong in man coverage, but he struggles to keep his hips straight. His feet are pointed diagonally away from receivers at times. Doesn't play with the physicality you want, but he's good enough in man coverage to start as a nickel corner. But the Bills are drafting him for depth. I actually like this pick from a value standpoint more than the Maxwell Hairston pick. I like Maxwell Hairston, but I had a round 2 grade on him, and the Bills took him at 30. So I do have a slight issue with that. Dolphins took Ole Gordon for depth behind Devin Achane and Jalen Wright. I gave the Dolphins an A for that. I thought that was really good value. JJ Pegg's is a Raider. Kyle McCord's an Eagle. Patriots got Andres Borregales, the Miami Hurricanes kicker, at 182. I gave the Patriots an A+ for that because right now, John Parker Romo, who went 11 for 12 in relief of Will Reichard on the Vikings, is the Patriots starting kicker. I do think John Parker Romo's an upgrade over Joey Sly, who was god-awful with the Patriots, but the Titans gave him a contract despite being awful with the Patriots. But they did the same thing after Nick Folk.
You said Will Reichard.
Will Reichard was good as a rookie, Joey. Will Reichard was good as a rookie. Will Reichard.
The USS Enterprise is now an NFL player.
Will Reichard, the Alabama kicker, was a player in last year's draft. Alabama kicker. He was a player in last year's draft.
I will say Will Reichard, USS Enterprise. That was the first thing.
That's fair. Will Reichard was a player in last year's draft, though, Joey. He had a good rookie year. I mean, he's one of the rookies that actually won Player of the Game on Draft Utopia for our game recaps. Will Reichard. He's one of the rookies that actually won that distinction. I think every kicker outside of the Jaguars kicker won that distinction. But yeah, Borregales, I think Borregales could end up starting, but the thing with John Parker Romo is even though he did well in relief of Will Reichard, he played indoors. We haven't seen John Parker Romo kick outdoors in an environment like New England, and we've seen Borregales kick it outdoors. So I think that does give Borregales a chance to win the kicker job. But either way,
no, Reichard's got it. Well done, number 1.
Will Reichard's on the Vikings, Joey. I'm talking about John Parker Romo versus Andres Borregales. Will Reichard's going to remain the Vikings kicker. His job is unaffected. Will Reichard's job is unaffected by this pick. I'm saying between John Parker Romo, the Vikings backup kicker who went 11 for 12 in relief of Reichard, versus the rookie kicker, Borregales, I think the rookie kicker has a chance because we haven't seen John Parker Romo kick a football outdoors, especially in an environment like a New England or a Cleveland or a Pittsburgh where the weather's a bitch in December and January. We haven't seen him kick in that type of environment. So I do think there's a chance Borregales could start. But I really should not give the kicker this much attention. I love the Devin Neal pick for New Orleans. I think he's your number 2 running back behind Kamara. I gave that an A+. I gave the Steelers an A for Will Howard. Right now, Will Howard's the only QB2 on a depth chart at the moment. Right now, Cam Ward's the only QB1. Jackson Dart is a third-string QB in the Giants depth chart. Jalen Milroe's a third-string QB on the third-string QB on Seattle's depth chart, even though he could end up moving up to backup. But, you have Sam Darnold, you have Drew Lock. Milroe's third-string on Seattle's depth chart. Dylan Gabriel, I think, is third-string behind Flacco and Pickett at the moment. I do think that will change over time. Same with Shadur. He's fourth-string. Chyler Show is fourth-string as long as Carr's healthy.
If Gabriel doesn't get his ass in Cleveland, Shadur being finishing in your last long. Okay? I don't know what Dylan Gabriel is doing, but when you're the guy immediately after is in Cleveland and
But right now, Will Howard's the only second-string quarterback. I'm not trying to segue to the Browns, Joey, but I do think we have to point out that distinction because it's a big one. You look at all the quarterbacks that were drafted in 2025, most of them are third string or fourth string. Cam Ward's the only day 1 starter, and the only backup at the moment is Will Howard.
I agree with you. I just find it absolutely absurd that a third-round pick is incapable of getting to the city he was drafted by before a 5th-round pick who is already making rounds in schools and giving speeches. Okay? That is absolutely absurd. What the hell is this 3rd-round pick doing? Because he's going to lose his spot simply because he got complacent.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie Fry even knew where Cleveland was. I mean, Charlie Fry, I know Charlie Fry gave Browns fans awful memories, but Charlie Fry, he played at Akron. I think he was drafted by the Browns in the 2nd round, and he ended up starting for the Browns very early in his career, and it was a disaster. But Charlie Fry at least knew where Cleveland was, which is more than you could say about Dillon Gabriel at this point.
Yeah, it's just absurd. You know, it's not even the Cleveland Browns thing as much as it is you're getting behind schedule to a 5th-round pick who's going to be your direct competition, and you can't even get to the freaking city. The hell is wrong with you?
But I just think it's so fascinating that Will Howard's the only 2nd-string quarterback, and he was drafted 160 spots after Jackson Dart at 25. That's what's so fascinating.
Yeah, and I can guarantee it. I haven't heard yet, but I can guarantee Will Howard made that trip 3 hours from Columbus to Pittsburgh, and he's probably already in the facility.
He already is in the facility. That is true. He already is in the facility, and I think Mason Rudolph has a very short leash. I could see Will Howard starting as early as week 4 like Kenny Pickett if Mason Rudolph does horrible.
Where the hell is Dillon Gabriel? He's a 3rd-round pick. He got 2 6th-round picks.
Well, Howard's a 6th-round pick. Shedeur was a 5th. Howard's a 6th.
Oh, then that makes it worse. Where is this 3rd-round pick? Because he sure as hell ain't with the team that drafted him, and the quarterbacks that were drafted after him, they're all in there. They're with their teams. They're already working. That's what pisses me off. Not the Browns.
Yeah, when Dillon Gabriel is looking for the city of Cleveland, he goes, huh? Like Banjo-Kazooie when he has no clue what's going on. When Banjo has no clue. The thing is, Banjo could kick ass. Dillon Gabriel is not Banjo. He's not the Banjo of quarterbacks if we're comparing him to video game characters, but I don't want to drag Joey down that rabbit hole.
No, it just pisses me off. You've got guys that are after a 3rd-round pick at your position, one of which was drafted on your team after you, and they're already making impressions in the city and getting a fan base and getting painted with and are winning over coaches, and you're sitting there, where the hell are you? They haven't even said where Dillon Gabriel is. He's a songwriter, but he's not in the team with the team in the city, the draftman.
Yeah.
That pisses me off.
Yeah, I gave the Ravens an F for Tyler Loop. He was my 7th best kicker. The Texans got Jaden Reed. The Titans got Kalen Mullings. I gave the Texans a D for Jaden Reed. I gave the Titans an A+ for Kalen Mullings. Khalil Mullings is my top fullback in the draft. Colts took Riley Leonard over Quinn Ewers. I gave the Colts a B grade for that because at least Riley Leonard was in my top 10 for quarterbacks. I do think it was a reach, but at the same token, he was in my top 10 for quarterbacks. But yeah, Riley Leonard is a Colt.
Has Riley Leonard already recorded?
I don't know, but Notre Dame's in the state of Indiana. Indianapolis is in Indiana. I would think he's reported.
He's going on where the fuck's Dillon Gabriel? I'm sorry. This is just really pisses me off.
Yeah, Joey's going to drop an F-bomb if I tell him that either of the FCS quarterbacks is reported to Las Vegas before Dillon Gabriel. So I'm going to have to look that up when we get to the Raiders' 6th-round picks, by the way. But I gave the Colts a D- for Tim Smith and Eagles a D for Miles Hilton. He's going to be a backup left tackle. Bryce Cabledew, F grade for Seattle, because they already have Bradford and Haynes at starter and backup right guard. So they draft a 3rd-string right guard. I gave the Bengals an A+ for Taj Brooks. I love the Taj Brooks pick. But the thing is, the Bengals have Chase Brown, Zach Moss, and Samaj Perine. Taj Brooks is going to be 4th string this year. He will be 3rd string in 2026 if the Bengals keep all of their running backs and they let Perine walk. He could be starting by 2027 if Brown and Perine both walk. But yeah, that right now, that is the plan. If it keeps all their running backs. Because Zach Moss is in a contract year, so Taj Brooks would be 3rd string in 2026, and he could be starting in 2027. But I do think Brooks has a higher ceiling than Chase Brown, so I do think this is a good pick by the Bengals. I just don't know how he's going to get involved in the offense. They might ease him in or start him out on the practice squad. I actually like Brooks more than Moss or Perine or Brown, but Bengals are going to ease him in. That's the reality. Ahmad Hassanein, the defensive end from Egypt, Boise State defensive end from Egypt, gets drafted by the Lions in round 6. He'll be the number 4 defensive end behind Aiden Hutchinson, Davenport, and Josh Paschal this year. And with Davenport and Paschal both being UFAs, Ahmad Hassanein could end up starting next to Aiden Hutchinson in 2026. That is a possibility.
Yeah, sorry, I'm calming down from that. Your meltdown confidence and doing. So I'll be back in a minute. I promise.
That's fine. I'm going through some of the grades here on the live stream. I'm not going to read through the teams that I gave bad grades to. Branson Taylor, Chargers got him as a backup left tackle. Rayon Lane to the Jaguars, gave that a D. Kobe King, C-. Gavin Bartholomew, a B. I mean, he's going to be a 3rd string tight end behind Hawkinson and Oliver. So the tight end depth for Minnesota got better. LeJonte Wester goes to the Ravens at 203. He will learn under Flowers, Bateman, and Hopkins for a year. Bateman and Hopkins are UFAs in 2026, so he might start by then next to Zay Flowers. I think his ceiling is higher than Devontae Walker. Not sure about his floor. Johnny Cornelius to the Cowboys at 204. He'll be a backup right tackle at Terrence Steele. Kane Madrano, a guy William likes, goes to the Commanders at 205. Chase Lund to the Bills. Cameron Williams to the Eagles as a backup right tackle. I really do like that pick. Jimmy Horn Jr. to the Panthers in the 6th round for depth. I like that pick. Antoine Powell-Ryland as a backup as a situational pass rusher for depth behind Jihad Campbell and Nolan Smith. Really like that pick. Anenis Peebles, 34 left end for depth in the 6th round. Hayden Connor went to the and that's at 210 with the Ravens comp pick. 209 with the Chargers comp pick that got sent to the Eagles. That was Antoine Powell-Ryland. Cardinals got a C- for Hayden Connor. Robert Longerbeam, the Rutgers corner. Tommy Malone went to the Raiders at 213. Montana State quarterback. He went to the Raiders at 213. Did he get to he had a 4.0 GPA, majored in engineering, ran a 4.41 40-yard dash. I do think passing on Ewers for this guy is inexcusable, but I was impressed enough with Tommy Malone to give the Raiders a C- instead of an F grade. I was impressed with Malone. RJ Mickens, C. I gave Cam Miller, the North Dakota State quarterback, a C- as well. Cam Miller, Tommy Malone, they were in the FCS championship, and it sounds like Miller and Malone are going to compete for the 3rd string job behind Aiden O'Connell and Geno Smith. And the Broncos took Jeremy Crawshaw with the Browns 6th round pick. The Browns initially sent this pick to Houston, and Houston sent this pick to Denver, and Denver turned this pick into Jeremy Crawshaw. I like Mason Fletcher more, but the Broncos liked Crawshaw. So, that is something I got to point out briefly. We got 21 viewers on the stream here. Okay, who's in the chat room? Do we have anybody in the chat room? Washington Commanders getting a linebacker. Steelers got Derek Harmon. So we got some good comments from Tracy here. Steelers getting Derek Harmon. I agree. Derek Harmon was an excellent pick. Cade Madrano. Tracy said Colson Loveland's going to be a good red zone threat along with Luther Burden. I agree. The Bears have weapons. Like, the Bears were one of my picks to make the wild card before the draft, but what they did in the first 2 rounds, I really think that's enough to where you can lock them in. I'm tempted to put Chicago ahead of Green Bay. I'm not gonna, but I'm very tempted to put Chicago ahead of Green Bay in my rankings.
Well, you also have to take into consideration that right now the Bears are also the leader to get Nick Chubb.
Yes.
So if you take that into consideration, because
and if they do get him,
Jerome Ford, yesterday the Browns
they brought back Jerome Ford on a restructuring, a huge pay cut.
Yeah. So that means that the Bears, who were
because Ben Johnson wants to build his offense exactly the way like he had in Detroit, so he wants a second running back next to Swift.
And if
they missed out on Ginty, so I would think that's going to be Nick Chubb.
Well, if the Instagram videos say anything, Nick Chubb's not going to be the number 2 guy in Chicago.
I'm guessing it would. I'm guessing Swift would be the number 2 guy, but let's get to round 7 because the Bears did have the biggest steal in round 7. I don't know if the Bears are even going to bring in Nick Chubb because they got the biggest steal in round 7, but we'll get to that when we get to that. The Cowboys took Jay Toya at 217 for depth. There were better defensive tackle options. The Falcons took Jack Nelson, the Wisconsin left tackle that Bale and I both like for depth, and he's going to learn under Jake Matthews, and I think that's a best case scenario for Jack Nelson. I could see him being the left tackle of the future when Matthews retires. So I really like that fit for Atlanta in round 7. Jack Nelson, the Wisconsin left tackle.
As a developmental prospect, that is, a very good fit. Developmental prospect.
I had a 5th round grade on Nelson. I do think he has starter potential, but I think he's super raw. And you put him in a situation where he gets to learn under Jake Matthews and you don't have to rush him and you can just develop him. I really like the fit. Not just the value, but I love the fit.
Basically, the entire theme of this draft. Developmental prospect throughout. What's your flavor? And this is a good flavor for Atlanta. So I like it.
I like the pass blocking strength, the run blocking, zone blocking. The pass blocking strength, run blocking strength is there. But the run blocking footwork was inconsistent against Alabama. He's got ability to be great, but he's got to go out. You got to go to a place where he can refine his strength and footwork more. And that's Atlanta's a perfect spot for Jack Nelson. Thomas Fedone II. Wes actually had him graded ahead of Brock Bowers when both tight ends came out of high school. I don't expect much out of Fedone, but because Wes likes him, I'll give the Giants a C+.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know Wes had him graded that high, but
coming out of high school, not college, not in terms of college production, just in terms of high school. High school, Joey.
Yeah,
that's the key word here.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you have ability, the ability doesn't go away. It's just how it's utilized throughout.
Yeah.
So I'm that kind of makes me stop and think, with this team, can they bring that ability and fill that potential?
And the 2 teams in round 6 that dropped the ball were the Colts and the Cardinals. They had A+ grades for every pick up until the 6th round. And the Patriots are the next team to drop the ball, but they did finish with the 4th best draft. Marcus Bryant, he did beat out Armand Membu for the left tackle job at Missouri. I didn't give the Patriots an A+ grade for this because they have Will Campbell as their left tackle, but basically Marcus Bryant's competing with Verdarian Lowe, last year's starting left tackle, for the backup job behind Will Campbell. That's basically...
I didn't hate this pick. I didn't think this was a bad pick. I'm not sure.
I'm not going to give it an A+. I'm not going to continue my Patriots A+ streak with Marcus Bryant, but I'm not going to give it a D or an F either. I gave it a solid C. I gave the Patriots a C for Marcus Bryant in round 7, okay? I gave it a C. I think that's a fair grade.
I would have given it around a B- or a B. I mean, I would have seen that I would have put that as a higher grade. At this point.
I don't think it's an A+ grade. I think we're in agreement on that. It's not an A+ grade. But at the same token,
but I would have thought that, you would have seen the same way I did. Is like this was for what the Patriots needed and how they needed to stockpile and the potential given that, you would have been like, yeah, this was a BB minus grade. I mean, is a good prospect at this point, And so I'm a little surprised that you did not see it the same way.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. The Jaguars got an A+ grade with their next pick at 221. They got Jonah Monheim, the center. Jonah Monheim was my number one center. I had Jonah Monheim ahead of Jared Wilson. And the Jaguars got Monheim in round 7, where Tony Mario projected him to go.
I love that pick because that's something that the Jags needed, and it's something that will grow very well within the next year or two. And he's a very good prospect.
And you got Robert Hainsey as your starting center. You got the center from Kentucky as your backup. Monheim might start out at 3rd string, but I do think he will either move up to 2nd string or 1st string by the end of the year. Because I think his ceiling's higher than Hainsey's.
2nd string before the end of camp.
Okay. They might just cut or trade the Kentucky center they spent a 2nd-round pick on at this point, because he got benched after his rookie year.
He was not good.
I think he got benched after his 2nd year, but yeah, he wasn't good.
He was beaten by the Browns defensive tackle. Those guys were bad at the time, okay? I'm talking horrific. I mean, Ogunjobi looked like a freaking Hall of Famer against him.
Yeah.
Hell no. Cut this guy.
The Kentucky center that the Jaguars took, I forget who it is. Luke Fortner. That I forgot. The guy was so disappointing. I actually forgot Luke Fortner's name. So I think Monheim's better than Fortner. So way better.
He was not good at any point in time. I mean, he actually made me feel sorry and gave me hope that Ogunjobi was going to be a Pro Bowl guy. He made me think Ogunjobi was a Pro Bowler.
Yeah.
How bad is he at that point?
And Cody Lindenberg went to the Raiders. I gave this an A-. I did have a 7th-round grade on Cody Lindenberg. Or wishes I gave this an A or A+, because Ginty was the only pick I gave the Raiders an A+ for. But Lindenberg, I mean, I do like Lindenberg in the 7th round. The problem is you have a Landon Roberts and you have Tommy Eichenberg, last year's middle linebacker, as the backup. So there's really not a spot for Lindenberg on the Raiders. He's going to be the 3rd-string middle linebacker. Didn't play Sam or Will. He's a pure Mike linebacker. There's not really a spot for him. I don't think he's going to beat out either of those guys. I do like the value here. I love the value here. The problem is I'm not confident he's going to beat out either Eichenberg or Landon Roberts, and he's going to remain a 3rd-string linebacker. But I think he could be the last guy on the roster, one of the last players to not get cut.
I'm not confident in the player or the I'm just not. This dude never really showed me anything.
94 tackles, 6 deflections, 5 tackles for loss, 3 QB hurries, 1 interception. I had a 7th-round grade on him, and that was after the Senior Bowl, not before the Senior Bowl, because he was a late addition to my board. Seahawks got one of the steals of the draft at 223. Seahawks got one of the steals at 223. Damian Martinez is a Seahawk, and he will be a 3rd-string running back behind Kenneth Walker III and Zach Charbonnet. I think he could end up as a starter by 2026, though. That's the crazy part. If Kenneth Walker leaves in free agency, you've got Martinez on a Pacheco-like rookie deal, and he's your starter.
Martinez will be the number 2 running back.
I think his upside's higher than Charbonnet's. I do, Joey. I'm with you on that 100%. I just don't know if the Seahawks are going to pull the trigger that early and move him ahead of Charbonnet.
If you remember correctly, we were watching Miami.
Yeah.
And I pointed out the first time you heard Martinez, I said, this guy's going to be a star.
I knew about Martinez before he was even at Miami. I was watching Martinez when he was at Oregon State.
Yeah, you were watching him, but the verbalization of things oftentimes means more. When I verbalized it, it was like, okay, more people than me think this. And they're thinking it publicly. And that is something, it's not just with this pick, but, anything within society.
I mean, I don't even think Martinez was the best running back picked in round 7, but he was one of the top 2 running backs picked in round 7.
I
Top
had
3.
Martinez as a 4th-round pick. I mean,
I had him in the 3rd round of my mock draft. Okay, that should tell you how much I liked him.
You were on it. You were on it. It's like, I will not, deny you're curious. You were on it. But Martinez, the only reason I have him as a 4th-round pick is because I knew the landscape of what he was going to do. If this was a normal running back year, he would have been a 2nd-round pick. But this, I knew the landscape. I mean, you got to know the landscape.
Yeah, that's true.
And the thing is, Martinez is a strong one-cut back with strength. He doesn't have a 2nd gear. Well, guess what? A lot of guys don't have a 2nd gear. But the thing is, can he get 4 or 5 yards a pop? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can he get 10 yards a pop? Absolutely. Is he going to break off a 60-yarder? Probably not. Every now and then, maybe. But is he going to get you 10 to 15 yards if he hits the right hole? Damn straight he is.
Yeah.
Got great vision. I like this pick. This was maybe the best pick of the later rounds.
I wouldn't say it's the best pick of this round. It's definitely a top 3, top 5 pick of round 7. I wouldn't say it's the best pick.
Well, I did say maybe.
All right, the Texans took Kyone Hamilton out of Rutgers. That was a worse pick than that. Keaton Crawford out of Nevada. I gave this an A- strictly because of the value. Because of the value only. I had a 7th on Crawford. I don't believe he's a starter, but the thing is, Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson, they extended Budda Baker. Jalen Thompson's a UFA in 2026. If the Cardinals believe Crawford can replace Thompson, this is a great value pick. I gave the Steelers a C for Carson Bruner. He's going to be a 3rd-string middle linebacker, but he is the nephew of former Steelers tight end Mark Bruner. So, I gave that a solid C.
I can resign to those couple grades.
Curtis Rourke, I gave that a C-. William talked about that a little bit earlier. Brashard Smith, I gave that an A+. Brashard Smith had really good tape, and I honestly think he could be he's going to start out as he's going to be the number 5 running back on the Chiefs. The Chiefs, I'll get to their backfield in a second here, but he is going to be there's just, the R in Carson Steele, I put that after the S, so I am correcting that. But yeah, looking at the Chiefs, the Chiefs have Pacheco as their number 1, Kareem Hunt's their backup, Elijah Mitchell's their 3rd stringer, Carson Steele's their 4th stringer, and Brashard Smith out of SMU's their 5th stringer. That's how deep the Chiefs are at running back. It's getting to the tipping point where Joey wants Trump to start deporting running backs from the Chiefs, or make the Chiefs get rid of these running backs because they have too many good ones. But yeah, they've got 5 good running backs. The Chiefs do. I don't know if all of them are going to make the roster. Dante Kent out of Central Michigan goes to Pittsburgh to challenge James Pierre. Dan Jackson, the Georgia strong safety, is your backup strong safety to Brian Branch. Kirby Joseph got extended at free safety, so you have Branch on a rookie deal for 2 more years, and Dan Jackson's going to be your backup strong safety to Branch. I gave the Lions an A+ for Dan Jackson. The Dolphins get an A+ for Quinn Ewers at 231. Really like the value here. The Colts also get an A+ at 232. They took Hunter Wohler, Wisconsin strong safety. Really like the value here. He's going to be a 3rd stringer this year, but next year he'll probably compete with Daniel Scott for the strong safety job if Dix Cross walks after this year. Wohler was a guy at a 3rd round grade on him. I gave him an A in man and an A in zone and A- in press. Bears got my number 1 player in round 7, Kyle Monangai out of Rutgers. I had a 2nd round grade on Kyle Monangai. The Bears took Kyle Monangai. Right now, Monangai is a 3rd string back behind Swift and Roshan Johnson. But I think Monangai's upside is greater than Roshan's. And if you get Nick Chubb, I'm trading Roshan Johnson because I think Monangai is better than Roshan. And I think a team would trade a 5th for 7th for Roshan at this point too. So yeah. Just saying. Kyle Monangai, Bears, Rutgers running back the Bears drafted at 233 was my favorite round 7 pick. Mason Richmond, the Iowa left tackle, I gave that a D grade. He's going to be a backup to Charles Cross. Tez Johnson, the Oregon wide receiver, was my other second round grade that fell to round 7. So Kyle Monangai to the Bears and Tez Johnson, Oregon receiver that went to the Buccaneers. Those are my 2 favorite round 7 picks in this draft. I would put Monheim at 3 and Martinez at 4 for best 7th round picks. But yeah, those 4 are probably my top 4. You want to add to that, Joey? Because basically right now, Tez Johnson's competing with Raheem Jarrett for the number 7 receiver job. McMillan, Shepard, Trey Palmer are your backups to Godwin, Egbuka, and Evans. So Tez Johnson is basically competing with Jarrett for a number 7 third string receiver job. And I think Jarrett's pretty much going to get cut. The question is, are the Buccaneers going to cut Shepard as well? Because if Tez Johnson and Egbuka outperform Shepard, I would think he's the guy on the chopping block. It's possible I'm wrong about that, but, just looking at this from a value standpoint, that's what I see. And I mean, to be fair, that if I had second round grades on Tez Johnson and I had a second round grade on Kyle Monangai, I had Quinn Ewers at 65 on my big board. So Ewers was probably my 3rd favorite round 7 pick, and then Jonah Monheim 4, Martinez 5. So 5 really good 7th round picks that warrant A+ value. There were a lot of good round 7 value picks, and this is why I told Joey earlier that there was more value in round 7 versus round 6. LaQuint Allen went to the Jaguars as a 3rd string running back. Micah Robinson, the Tulane corner, went to the Packers. Ricky White III's a Seahawk. Seahawks took Ricky White III after taking Damian Martinez in round 7. I had a 3rd on Ricky White. Very good value for him. They already got Torrey Horton, but now you get Ricky White III on top of that. Cowboys took Phil Maffa out of Clemson. Bills took Caden Prather. Broncos took Caleb Lohner. Konata Mumfield out of Pittsburgh's a Ram. Garrett Dellinger's the LSU left guard is going to be a Raven backup to Voorhees. Dominic Lovett's a Lion. Dominic Lovett might be a better value pick than Isaac Tesla, but either way, I love the value. Lions got an A+ there. I had a 5th on Lovett, by the way. Ja'Cory Cross, Merritt goes to the Commanders at 245. Corey Black is a Giant. Tommy Aking, Besso, Maryland defensive tackle, is a Cowboy. Molokai Matvau is a Saint. Connor Colby's a 49er. I love the Connor Colby pick. I had a 5th on Connor Colby, and if the 49ers move Dominic Pooney to left guard where Aaron Banks played, Colby can be a day 1 starter. I think he has upside to develop into a starter. The problem is he had no answer for Ohio State's defensive tackles. He might be better off as a backup right guard to Pooney to start out, but I do like the value regardless at 249. John Williams is a Packer, Cincinnati left tackle. I gave the Packers a D-. Julian Ashby, I gave the Patriots a B for a long snapper. Why? He was the number 2 long snapper in the Phil Steele magazine I had. Michigan only Michigan had a better long snapper than Ashby out of Vanderbilt. The 49ers took Junior Bergen out of Montana at 252. Zeke Biggers at 253 is a Dolphin. Fadil Diggs at 254 is a Saint. I gave the Saints an A+. The Saints, listen to me. The Saints took Fadil Diggs at pick 254. I mocked Fadil Diggs to New Orleans at 254. The Saints actually took a player I mocked to them in round 7. I got a round 7 pick correct, Joey. I did not get Mr. Irrelevant correct like Tony Mario, but in my defense, I did get a round 7 pick correct. And it was the 4th to last pick. So, kudos to me. But Fadil Diggs could be a 3rd string defensive end or a backup right outside linebacker. The versatility is really the big selling point with Fadil Diggs at 254. Luke Lakey goes to the Texans with the pick they got from the Browns. And Luke Lakey, he'll probably start on the practice squad, but, the Texans have Dalton Schultz as the starting tight end. They have Brevin Jordan as the backup. They have Cade Stover as the 3rd string guy. But if they cut Brevin Jordan, Cade Stover becomes the backup. Luke Lakey becomes the 3rd stringer. If there's a team that's willing to trade for Brevin Jordan, I definitely explore that territory because I think Lakey is good enough to be the 3rd string tight end. And it's kind of advantageous to have Dalton Schultz extended and 2 rookie tight ends on rookie deals for the next 3 years. Because Stover enters his sophomore year, Luke Lakey's going to enter his rookie year. That's very advantageous. And the Texans, I love what they did. They reloaded at left tackle. They reloaded at receiver. They reloaded at tight end. They got more guys on rookie deals for Stroud. And that's going to be beneficial because when you have to extend Stroud and pay him, you're still going to have those guys in rookie deals for 1 or 2 more years. Trickweezy Bridges out of Florida goes to the Chargers at 256, and Kobe Minor out of Memphis is Mr. Irrelevant. The Memphis corner is Mr. Irrelevant. So that is the draft, Joey. Clay Webb, he went to the Broncos as an undrafted free agent as a backup left guard to Ben Powers. It's possible he wins the starting center job in Denver. But yeah, that's the draft. Anything you want to add that I did not get to? Because we covered every pick. What do you want to add that I did not get to? Did your audio disconnect, Joey? All right, I'm going to check the comments in the chat room. See, I'm going to check the chat room. Best viewers on Streamboo. All right. Okay. All right. You don't have anything you want to add? Well, if you do, if your audio does end up working, I will definitely make sure to get to that. So, yeah. It's not that I don't want to. I already showed Tracy's comments with Kane Medrano. I mean, Kane Medrano, you think Kane Medrano is a steal? All right. It's not that I disagree. It's that I just don't want to re-show comments I already showed. But yeah, I do appreciate this. But yeah, okay. I'm trying to hide comments. It's not that I don't want to read comments. I'd love to read the comments. It's just I don't want to read the comments multiple times. All right. Come on, Restream. Don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. All right. We pretty much covered everything NFL related. Now, a lot of big news is coming out this week. Hockey related news. There's going to be a lot of hockey news coming out this week. The NHL draft lottery is Monday. We will find out before the Florida-Toronto game who gets the number 1 and number 2 picks. We're also going to find out. What happens in the Western Hockey League draft. That is on Wednesday. Maddox Schultz is projected to go number 1. Schultz is the early front runner to go number 1 overall in 2028. So those hockey events are both this upcoming week. We also have 2 Game 7s in the NHL. Avalanche play the Stars tonight in Dallas. Peter DeBoer. Colorado's 0-6 in their last 6 Game 7s. Dallas is 8-0 under Peter DeBoer's 8-0 in Game 7s in his career. Dallas, they've got 30 home wins on the season. They would get to 31 with a victory tonight. Avalanche is connected to the number 31. So we'll see what happens. Part of me thinks Colorado's due, but a part of me also wants to believe the connection to Dallas. Tony Mario has Dallas winning. Bandel's betting on Dallas. Bandel bet on the Lakers, and they lost the Timberwolves. So, I'm at the point where if Anakin, Jason's kid, takes the cell phone from Jason, I'm going to look the other way for Anakin. I'm going to turn a blind eye for Anakin because I'm at the point where I can't have Jason's gambling and him losing sports bets cost my teams in the playoffs. We're at that point. And yeah, I mean, you think Joey roasting me is bad? You look at the chat room in Bandel's Fantasy Football group chat. It is brutal. He gets roasted for betting on the wrong teams. It is brutal. I'm not going to say anything more about that because what happens in Jason's chat room stays in his chat room. But yeah. So just saying. But yeah. Is there anything else we got to add? I mean, I feel like we've covered everything. Your audio isn't working, Joey. But yeah, the NHL, what they're going to do on Monday is they're going to air the lottery live. Basically, the four numbers that you see, instead of waiting to show the full lottery until after it's on television, they're actually going to show the lottery numbers live on television. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, the 4-digit combination. They're going to show the 4-digit combination drawings live on television and then reveal who ends up with the number 1 pick via the combinations. This is the first time we're going to see a draft do that. Yeah, the MLB, NHL, and NBA drafts do that behind the scenes, but they don't do that on the air. We're going to see the NHL do that on the air for the first time on Monday for the number 1 and number 2 picks. San Jose's already came out and they're going to take Schaefer if they get the number 1 pick. They're going to take Misa if they get number 2. If they miss out on both of them, miss out on both lottery spots and end up at 3, it's going to be the James Higgins, the Boston College Center. That's what we've heard. We haven't really heard anything from anybody else in particular. Heard Chicago Blackhawks love Michael Misa, who can play center and left wing. He'd be a good player to pair up with Bedard. And you could Porter Martone's now jumped Higgins as the number 3 player in most draft boards. Higgins was the preseason number 1 player. Now he's dropped to 4 in most draft boards. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. It's going to be very interesting, though, what happens. What's my prediction for the NHL draft lottery? I think the Sharks are going to get number 1, and we're going to see a team in the 7 through 11 range move up to number 2. I think somebody in that 7 through 11 range is going to end up jumping all the way up to 2, because we have not seen a team in the 7 through 11 range move up to 2 in the history of the draft lottery. Usually it's the team with the worst record who gets number 1, and then it's a team in the top 5 or 6 that ends up moving up to 2. I think we're going to see either Buffalo, Anaheim, Pittsburgh, the New York Islanders, or the Rangers move up to number 2. And I actually saw an NHL mock draft with the Islanders moving up from 10 to 1. I do not think that's going to happen in real life. As much as Lisa would love to see that happen, I do not think the Islanders are moving up from 10 to 1. But if I had to make a lottery prediction, Joey, I will go with San Jose staying at 1, and I have Pittsburgh moving up from 9 to 2. The Pittsburgh Penguins, they move up from 9 to 2, and the Blackhawks drop from 2 to 3. The Predators drop from 3 to 4. The Flyers drop from 4 to 5. The Bruins drop from 5 to 6. The Kraken drop from 6 to 7. Sabres drop from 7 to 8. And the Anaheim Ducks drop from 8 to 9. And the Islanders and Rangers stay at 10 and 11. And the Rangers did hire former Penguins head coach Mike Sullivan, who did get fired. Sullivan led the Penguins to 2 Stanley Cups in 2016 and 2017. He got fired. The Rangers hired him immediately. And there's rumors that the Lightning are going to fire Jonathan Cooper. If they do, I expect the loser of tonight's Dallas-Colorado game to pounce on Jonathan Cooper. And either Bednar or DeBoer would become available if the Lightning panicked and got rid of Cooper. Because I mean, Jonathan Cooper's been the coach of the Lightning since 2011. And even when he got them to the conference finals, you kept him. When he won his first Stanley Cup, you kept him in year 9 and year 10. And now he's entering year 15 and you want to fire the guy because he's lost in the first round 3 years in a row. I don't agree with that. Cooper, if you want to fire a coach that only won 1 Stanley Cup and he struggled as of late, that's understandable. But a guy who's won multiple cups and has coached in 4 Stanley Cups, that's not a guy you fire, because that's a guy who's going to be in demand. He's going to be in demand no matter whether you keep him or let him go. He's going to get a job offer almost immediately. So much so to the point where I could see Dallas or Colorado, whoever loses tonight's game, poaching him away if the Lightning do in fact fire him. But yeah, that's the hockey news. The Clippers play the Nuggets in Game 7 tonight. I don't know what's going on with Joey's audio. Is there anything you want to add before I sign off? Because it's noon. We've pretty much covered everything in 2 hours. I really did not have a big show planned for this week.
I actually just realized that for some reason my phone went from earbud to speaker. Why? I don't know. There's something wrong with talk to you.
Okay. Okay.
Case. But as the NBA playoffs come around, I heard the term gentleman's sweep for the Pacers win. What the hell is a gentleman's sweep?
Gentleman's sweep is when you sweep your opponent on your home court. That's where it comes from, because they used that term in the NBA Finals last year when the Celtics beat the Mavericks in 5 games. That's a gentleman's sweep. You lose a game on the road so you can win the finals at home, win the series at home. That's a gentleman's sweep.
I just call it old-fashioned ass whipping.
Yeah.
But I'm a gentleman about sweeping somebody when I'm not at home. I whoop their ass regardless.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how whoever came up with that term, you know.
Yeah, because the NBA lottery is not until May 12th, next Monday. This Monday's the NHL lottery. But the NBA lottery is the following Monday on May 12th. So
either way, I think the Cavs are going to win next round.
they're going to beat the Pacers in 6, but I think we're in agreement. Whoever wins the Boston-Cleveland series, that's the NBA Finals this year. With the Lakers being eliminated, the Boston-Cleveland Eastern Conference Finals is the NBA Finals. Whoever wins that is probably beating the Thunder.
Dumbfounding me. The Lakers are gone. The Warriors are probably going to be gone. That is dumbfounding.
Bannell's betting on these sports teams, by the way. I don't want to throw Bannell under the bus, but when he bets on sports teams, they usually lose. He ends up losing money. It's like a kiss of death for some of my teams. It's been a kiss of death for the Lakers. I hope it's not a kiss of death for the Dallas Stars. Tony Mario is picking Dallas to win tonight in Game 7. Colorado is favored. But yeah, now Tony's making jokes how Dallas can bring back Madonna, Neuendijk, Langenbrunner, Hull, Zuboff, Zador, all of them for one game. I would love to see that personally, but they're all in like their 50s now. I appreciate the humor, Tony, but they're all in their 50s now, as great as those guys are.
I know, but I thought I would see more pride in these guys. Like, I'm not going out with a whimper. I'm going out with a huge freaking sword to the chest. And I'm getting whispers here. And that's what surprises me. Like, come on, guys. You're the old guard. It's like, you know, Bill Russell, even when nobody expected them to win their 11th championship, whipped his ass in there, and they won. Will Smith whipped his ass in there, couldn't even walk.
I do not like the term gentleman's sweep, but that's what it is. You win in front of your home crowd. You lose a game on the road so you can win the series in front of your home crowd. That's basically the term.
I swear that person had to be British.
Yeah. Who's going to win a game first, CF Montreal or LA Galaxy? That's tough. They're both winless after 10 MLS games. But the fact that the Galaxy haven't won is embarrassing. They were the MLS Cup champions last year. The fact that you haven't won a game, we're 10 games through a 34-game MLS season. You're still winless after winning the MLS Cup. That would be the single worst collapse in sports. I mean, the Raiders went from losing the Super Bowl 37 to picking second in the draft. Montreal went from losing the Stanley Cup to picking first in the draft. LA Galaxy going from winning the MLS Cup to being winless and having the first pick in the 2026 MLS draft, that would top both the Raiders and the Canadians as the single worst first to worst collapse in sports history. And you're still winless after 10 games. You won the championship last year, and you're winless after 10 games. Oh, okay.
I know I've said this before, and I would say it again, and I would say it again. Have some freaking pride in yourself. You are the old guard. You're the old guard in your sport. You're the old guard in who you're playing.
I know Sporting Kansas City lost their first 10 games and made the playoffs 2 years ago, even after hosting a game right after the NFL draft. That was an outlier. That is not happening again.
And we have 2 winless teams this year. We have CF Montreal and the LA Galaxy. They're both winless after 10 games. And the MLS is only a 34-game regular season. So if you're winless after 10 games, you have 0 wins, 7 losses, and 3 ties. I'm not counting the ties as a win. Yeah, you get a point for a tie, but a tie is a loss in my book because it's not a win. So, yeah. I mean, right now, we're looking at 2.
Well, Chris, I guess before we sign off, there's only one question left for you. You have the Lakers going to the final. The Warriors are good as gone at this point.
We both picked the Lakers to make the finals, and they're both eliminated. I think it's going to be Thunder Rockets, and I think the Thunder are going to come out of the West, and they're going to lose the Celtics-Cavs winner. That's probably what's going to end up happening now. Okay?
Yeah, that was what the question was. It's like, I don't know. I think we still think Celtics.
I do think it's the Celtics.
The Western Conference, though, who is it?
I mean, the Western Conference is wide open. Rockets and Warriors, I think, went to... Is Rockets-Warriors, is that going to a Game 7 on Sunday?
Yep.
Or is that...
Yep.
Yes.
That's Game 7.
So Game 7 Sunday, and then Game 7 of Nuggets-Clippers is today. So the last time there were 2 Game 7s involving a city, it was 2 years ago, I believe. No, it was 3 years ago. The Dallas Mavericks played a Game 7 against the Dallas Mavericks played a Game 7 against the I think it was the Phoenix Suns, and the Dallas Stars played the Calgary Flames in the double overtime loss where Calgary beat Dallas, but the Mavericks beat the Suns in Game 7. It was the Suns or the Timberwolves. It was somebody. I don't remember who. And the Stars lost to Calgary. So 3 years later, we've got the Denver Nuggets playing the Clippers in Game 7, and we've got the Colorado Avalanche playing the Dallas Stars in Game 7. So if history repeats itself, the Nuggets will win Game 7 and the Avalanche will lose to Dallas tonight. So that was the last time an NBA and NHL team both played in Game 7 on the same day. 3 years ago, Dallas Mavericks and Dallas Stars played in Game 7 on the same day. And it was a Wednesday. This is a Saturday, though, and you got the Nuggets and Avs in Game 7 on the same day. So if you're a Denver sports fan, this is basically your Super Bowl. Because you have Nuggets Game 7 and Avalanche Game 7 tonight. And that Stars Avalanche Game 7's on ABC. It's not one of these games where it's on ESPN or TNT. It's on ABC. This is one of the few cable games Joey gets this year is Stars Avalanche. My follow-up question to Joey before we sign off is, what teams do you think are going to win the lottery? Because the NHL lottery's Monday. Honestly, I'm picking San Jose and Pittsburgh to get the picks 1 and 2 in the lottery. Honestly, I would like to see Nashville win the lottery. Nashville has never won the NHL lottery once. The highest Nashville Predators ever picked was second overall in 1998 when they were an expansion team. They took David Legwand. And that was before the NHL adopted the lottery format. So Nashville has never picked number 1 in the NHL draft in their entire history as a franchise. The Flyers, they have not picked number 1 in a while. I don't think they have had number 1. They've had number 2 a few times. I don't think they've had number 1, though. The Boston Bruins have a lot of talent. I wouldn't mind seeing them win the lottery because they are in a rebuild right now. The Kraken have never had the number 1 pick in the lottery. They got Matthew Beniers at 2 and Shane Wright at 4, but they've never had the number 1 pick. Buffalo Sabres, they've had to... If Buffalo ended up with the number 1 pick, they would have 3 defensemen that they drafted number 1 overall. Rasmus Dahlin, Owen Power, and Matthew Schaefer, which would be insane if the Sabres won the lottery. But they would have 3 defensemen that they drafted number 1 overall. The Anaheim Ducks have the 8th best odds. Penguins are 9th. New York Islanders, Lisa's team, are 10th. And the Rangers are 11th. And San Jose and Chicago have the best odds at the lottery. And the other thing that the NHL owners voted on, Joey, is if the Sharks or Blackhawks win the lottery, they are ineligible for the Gavin McKenna lottery next year because you cannot have the number 1 pick more than twice in 5 years. San Jose took Macklin Celebrini number 1 last year, and the year before that, Chicago took Connor Bedard in 2023. So if San Jose or Chicago wins the lottery, which has a 38% probability of happening, with the next best team having an 11.5% probability, Nashville, if San Jose or Chicago wins this lottery, they get Gavin McKenna. They are ineligible to win the Gavin McKenna lottery. So if I'm San Jose or Chicago, I am trading number 1. If a team gives me a first in 26, a first in 27, and a first this year, I'm trading number 1 because I would rather have McKenna or DuPont than Schaefer. That's not a knock against Schaefer. His adversity is incredible, but the potential, I think McKenna is the best of those 3. I think you could argue Schaefer over DuPont, but if I can get 3 number 1s for Schaefer, I'm moving the pick. Or I'm moving the pick because I want to maximize my odds at getting McKenna. That's the thought process.
I don't know why you asked me this one because
what 2 teams do you want to see win the lottery?
I don't give a crap about the lottery. That's the problem. The lottery is an outdated, archaic thing that should be outlawed.
The problem is it's not outlawed. In fact, more leagues are embracing it. NBA is a 4-team lottery. NHL is a 2-team lottery. MLB is a 6-team lottery draw. And the junior hockey leagues are all using lottery systems. Ontario Hockey League, Western Hockey League, Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, they've all implemented the lottery system.
This is where I will give the NBA credit. You are phasing out an old-time thing that worked well in the 80s.
NBA still does lottery.
This is adapting it. I don't stand behind all these other leagues in the NBA. I hate the lottery. I love the lottery when now the lottery is irrelevant. Nobody cares.
There's only 2 leagues that don't do the lottery system. Major League Soccer and the NFL. That's it. Those are the only 2 leagues that don't do the lottery system. Major League Soccer and the NFL are the only 2 leagues that don't do the lottery system now. Everybody else does the lottery system.
And you know what? The NBA, give it 5 years, they're not going to do it either. And they're the ones that originated. So what should I tell you about the lottery?
NBA's still going to do it, but I'm talking about the NHL lottery. The NBA lottery's next week. The NHL lottery's Monday.
It's not a lottery. It's not a lottery. And what's that thing about the NHL lottery? If the NBA is getting rid of the lottery.
NBA's not getting rid of the lottery. They're not getting rid of it, though, Joey. That's the thing. They're not getting rid of it.
Okay, then it used to be 16 teams. What's it down to now?
The NHL lottery used to be 16 teams. Now only the bottom 11 can get the number 1 pick.
The NBA lottery, what's it down to now?
The NBA lottery, it is 14 teams. The 16 teams that make the playoffs and the 14 that miss it can get the number 1 pick.
It's still down.
It's still the same. It's still the same. No, it's still the same system. NBA is still running the same lottery.
Since the 80s?
Yeah, the only difference is instead of having 3 lottery draws, now they have 4 lottery draws. Because a few years ago, 5 years ago, the NBA and NHL both had 3 lottery draws. The NBA increased that number to 4, and the NHL decreased that number to 2. Because there were a ton of teams that got screwed over by the lottery. The Avalanche, they only won 17 games, and they fell from 1 to 4 in the 2017 draft. The Red Wings won 14 games in 2020. They ended up dropping from 1 to 4 in the lottery. The Florida Panthers got screwed out of Nate McKinnon. They had the worst record in 2013. They had 23 wins. And the Avalanche had 27 wins, and the Avalanche ended up getting Nate McKinnon over the Florida Panthers because of the lottery. So the Buffalo Sabres had the worst record the year Connor McDavid was draft eligible. They ended up picking Jack Eichel at 2, and the Oilers got McDavid at 1, and the Oilers ended up getting the number 1 pick for the 4th time in 6 years. That's a big reason why the lottery has been reduced from 3 draws to 2. That's a big reason why.
nerves at this point. Lotteries are an outdated, fucked-up concept.
That's not what the NHL and NBA think. They love them.
And, yeah, they love it because they make money off of it. They make money off of it. That's where they live it. For me, I've been watching this shit for 25 years, 30 years.
But they're making a new change to the lottery where they're going to reveal the 4 numbers, like the 4-number combination.
We changed it, so you're going to be better. No, it's not.
Yes, it is. It's going to be better. It's going to be more transparent because you're going to have the lottery numbers. You're going to have the 4-digit lottery combination for the number 1 and number 2 teams in hockey. That's going to be live.
Doesn't matter. Because you're screwing the teams that need to fix the most simply because you want to have more views on some YouTube channel or on your app.
Well, San Jose won 20 games. San Jose won 20 games this year. That was the worst in the league. San Jose won 20 games. That was the worst in the league. The worst they would drop to is 3. Back in the day, they would drop to 4. But with the 2-team lottery draw, the furthest San Jose can drop is 3.
Now, here's the bottom line. I'm holding a 12-ounce can of natural light beer. I haven't opened it yet. You know, like that commissioner, if he was standing in front of me on this sidewalk right now, I'd put it right between his eyes. Then I'd pick it up and say, "You're still not picking beer." Then I'd kick him again. Because the stupid fucking lottery that's holding back the score.
You know, if you got a problem with the lottery, you can go to NHL Network headquarters in New Jersey. NHL Network and MLB Network, they share the same studio in New Jersey, and that is where the lottery is conducted.
And then women there too. Just they don't give a shit because guess what? Girls wait. That freaking lottery.
Yeah, and William said we should have an NFL lottery, but hell no, I'm against that.
They will hurt the owners, the teams, whatever, because it draws money. It's an outdated system that was great for its time. I admit the lottery was great for its time. It did everything it needed to do for its time.
Interesting. I just did a lottery draw for the I just did a lottery draw on Tankathon. The Sharks ended up with the number 1 pick. They had the worst record. The Detroit Red Wings, who had the 12th worst record, 39, 35, and 8, ended up moving up from 12 to 2. So the Red Wings got the number 2 pick. The Blackhawks, who won 25 games, 14 less than the Red Wings, dropped to 3. Nashville drops to 4. They won 30 games. Philadelphia drops to 5. They won 33 games, 6 less than the Red Wings. So basically, every team outside of the Rangers won less than 39 games. It's in the top 11. They all drop a spot, even the Rangers. So
I swear to shit, I will start beating people over the head with the draw, the fucking lottery was put into place because, let's face it, it was put in place because Red Auerbach made the rest of the owners in the NBA look like a bunch of fucking idiots.
that's the NBA lottery history, but we're going to look at the NHL lottery history.
No, that is the history of the lottery. It was put into place so nobody could make owners and executives look like a bunch of fucking idiots again.
Up until 1994, the NHL draft order was determined by standings. In 1995, the NHL adopted a lottery, 10 years after the NBA adopted their lottery. So,
and here's the fact of the matter. They adopted it because in 1978, Red Auerbach decided he was going to convince the owners of the NBA to allow people to go back to school and still draft them and then go into the pros afterwards. He drafted Larry Bird. Larry Bird lit the fucking league on fire. And then they got the lottery. And then guess what happened? every other league adopting the lottery. Guess what? Is the lottery in professional sports at its core is nothing more than a giant middle finger to run on about.
Well, the big reason the NHL implemented the lottery was simple. The Penguins tanked for Mario Lemieux in the 80s. In the 1983-84 season leading up to the 84 NHL draft, the Penguins blatantly tanked so they could get Mario Lemieux. And the Ottawa Senators did the same thing with Alexander Daigle in 1993, who was the biggest draft bust in NHL history. And that led to the lottery being introduced.
Yeah, but with the lottery concept would have been the same concept if Ray Auerbach hadn't done what he did, and that there would have been a big middle finger right there to Red Auerbach. But basically, what they're doing is adopting a same system that gave a middle finger to Red Auerbach. So guess what? Every single one is a big middle finger to Red Auerbach because he fucked with the owners and won. And then the NFL said, "Oh, these teams are fucking with us," and they won. Guess what's going to happen? We're going to do the same thing the NBA did when somebody fucked with them and won. It's outdated. I get this 50-year system. You need to get over it, kids. It happened before you were ever executives. It happened before some of you were born. Okay?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And from 1995 to 2012, a team could not move up more than 4 positions in the draft order if they won the lottery. New Jersey ended up moving up from 8 to 4 in the 2011 NHL draft lottery. The Devils won the lottery, but they only moved up from 8 to 4. That was the old format. That was the original format. And then prior to 2014, 2015, the odds were changed, giving less weight to the team finishing last, in addition to a more spread out distribution of odds. And that was the McDavid draft. So, and then that's really when they changed the lottery format from giving a team a 20% probability, the worst record of getting the number 1 pick, to balancing it out. And then they did the top 3 lottery draws from 2016 to 2019. And then there was the second phase, and then in 2021 they only did 2 lottery draws, and starting in 2022 a team can only move up 10 spots in the draft, and also a team can only win the lottery twice in a 5-year span, no more than twice in a 5-year span. So if the Sharks or Blackhawks win the lottery, they do not get Gavin McKenna or Landon DuPont, and that kind of sucks for those teams because they need all of the stars they can get right now to complete their rebuilds.
I just hate the concept of all this stuff was adopted because one guy outsmarted everybody else in one sport, and everybody else, every time they were outsmarted by a general manager or president or whatever, had to adopt it. And it was fine for its time, but it's gotten so outdated that everybody has to double down. You have to double down on screwing over lesser teams because people are outsmarting you. With a bigger pride that...
Yeah, but here's the thing. The team with the worst record has only won the lottery 10 times in 30 years. So that's a third of the time.
You know what would have happened if the lesser team with the worst record didn't have to go to the lottery? They would have won it 30 out of 30 times.
Yeah.
It probably would have been better off for it. Like bullshit. All because in 1978, Red Auerbach made people look like a bunch of fucking fools when he took every vote and then let him go back to college for the 79 season, and then everything goes to hell within the next 5 years, and then within the next 20 years, every league's adopting something that prevents them from looking like a bunch of fucking gobshites. fucking embarrassing. It's time to move on from the past, guys.
I don't think we're going to move on. I think it's more likely that the MLS and NFL adopt lottery systems than all the leagues getting rid of the lottery systems entirely. It's a shame, but that's where we're at.
I don't think the NFL will. And here's why. Because the NFL, unlike the other leagues, is so entrenched in how they do things, and they've been doing things for like 50 years at the same pace.
But this is the thing. The NHL only does 2 lottery draws.
They are prideful. They are not going to stop simply because the rest of the league say, well, we need to do things this way. The NFL's like, no. They have lawsuits against them, telling them to do things differently. They're like, fuck you. The NFL ain't doing anything, but the NFL is like, in this case, NFL's like Major League Baseball. You need to do things differently. Their kids like,
well, the NHL only does 2 lottery draws. In their defense, they only do 2 lottery draws. The NBA does 4 now. They used to do 3, and the MLB does 6, which I think is way too many. The MLB does 6 lottery draws. And we've seen how much of a disaster that's been. But the NHL only does 2 lottery draws. And the team with the worst record has gotten the number 1 pick 3 of the last 4 years since the 2 lottery draw system was implemented. Okay? So that's the thing, Joey. That's what you got to take into consideration here. But yeah, 2017 was a really weird year. New Jersey moved up from 5 to 1. Philadelphia moved up from 11 or 12 to 2, 13 to 2, I think, and Dallas moved up from 8 to 3. And Colorado, who had 14 wins that year, ended up dropping from 1 to 4.
Somebody wasn't paying attention on the road, just hit dude on a scooter. What the fuck, dude? It's like, don't try to run a fucking red light. Thankfully, he was all right, but, you know, it's like, people.
I am excited about the live draw for the lottery. I am excited about the live draw. The problem is, it's like, you know, the lottery's the norm now. I mean, everybody uses the lottery system now, outside of the NFL and the MLS. Everyone else uses it, and they're not going to stop using it. Even if Joey hates the system, it doesn't matter. They're just going to keep using it.
And you know what viewer they're going to lose every league that adopts the lottery system? I'm raising my hand right now, guys. And I'm pretty sure if I feel this way, a lot of other people got to feel this way. I think Major League Baseball and the NFL are 2 leagues that will never...
And MLB does do a lottery, Joey. I hate to tell you, the Athletics would have gotten Paul Skeens. Joey, if the MLB didn't do a lottery, the Athletics would have gotten Paul Skeens in 2023, and they didn't. The Nationals would have had the number 1 pick instead of the Guardians in 2024. So,
well, here's the thing about Major League Baseball system, and this is why I both love and hate them. Is that, we're going to do a lottery system. We're going to restrict it so much that it doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, and the White Sox end up dropping from 1 to 11, even though they had the worst record in the league, because of their revenue sharing deal. They end up dropping from...
the revenue sharing is an entirely different tax, okay?
The revenue sharing TV deals.
That's something that you and I can agree is bad. But we can also agree.
Yeah.
It ain't changed anytime soon. And if you can't pull in the money for the rest of the owners, you're going to get punished. That has nothing to do with record. That has nothing to do with anything else. That has everything to do. If you kept money out of our pockets, that's an entirely different subject. They threw it into the lottery as a punishment. But as far as the lottery in Major League Baseball goes, they don't really give a shit about the lottery. It's just there. What they care about is the money from revenue sharing.
Yeah.
And the White Sox are the worst, maybe even the worst in professional sports in revenue.
No, if you make enough money in revenue sharing, you have to give up the first round pick. You can't pick in the top 10. If you make enough money through TV revenue, you have to.
Have you paid attention to attendance with the White Sox lately?
Attendance is irrelevant. They don't care about relevance. The White Sox finished in the top 10 in TV revenue, so they lose their draft pick in the top 10 as a result, and they have to pick at 11. That's the rule. That's the rule. It's a bullshit rule, but that is the rule. If you were in the top 10 in TV revenue, you lose your draft pick.
But the bottom line is that the problem is guess who shares revenue with the White Sox? The Cubs. Guess who's been more successful? The Cubs. Guess who gets more games on WGN? The Cubs. Guess who ends up being more people in the stadium? The Cubs. That all goes into revenue. And it's all into revenue share. It's just not, one thing or another. Revenue sharing is the revenue you bring in.
The Rockies are going to have the same problem as the White Sox because they picked in the lottery each of the last 2 years. The highest they will pick is 10th, and the Rockies are 6-26. The White Sox are 9-23. So the Rockies are going to pick 10th in 2026. Right now, the White Sox and Pirates have the best odds at the number 1 pick for the 2026 lottery.
The Rockies are going to pick in front of where the White Sox pick for the simple fact of Major League Baseball doesn't have anybody else in Colorado.
So the White Sox are going to pick 10th.
The
White Sox is going to be 10th. Yeah. The revenue sharing might be higher, yeah. Angels are 11th. The Nationals are 12th. And the Cardinals are 13th for 2026. That's the way this is being formatted right now.
Major League Baseball's lottery is unique from any other lottery because they don't just do it on the play on the field. It's like you perform and you get us like top 12.
I'm not surprised by the standings personally because I said it would be Tigers or Mariners. I had Mariners over Dodgers in the World Series. I had Tigers in the ALCS. And Yankees and Guardians are also in the divisional round losers for the American League for the lottery, according to Tankathon. It's early, but that's where they've got those teams placed. So that's exactly where I had each team placed in the preseason. I had Tigers, Mariners in the ALCS and World Series with Mariners beating Dodgers, and then I had the Guardians and Yankees losing in the ALDS. So Tankathon's draft order is aligning exactly with my preseason predictions. So just saying.
That's why I don't really see Major League Baseball lottery with everybody else's lotteries because it's not even halfway about what's on the field. It's about, revenue? What are you giving me? Oh, we don't get the same amount that you would have gotten?
Yeah, but a team can move up from 18 to 2 because they do 6 lottery draws. A team can move up. A team with a winning record can move into the top 6 if they win the lottery draw. That's the thing.
Yeah, but at the same time, does that really, when you add...
Yeah, it does matter because if a team's as bad as the Rockies or White Sox and they get screwed out of a top pick by a team with a winning record, that is unfair. But the owners voted on it. It's not the team's fault. The owners voted on it, so...
Well, it is unfair, but you know what else is unfair? is that these teams are literally tanking to keep their revenue down. That's unfair to the fans. That's unfair to everybody else. That's unfair to the
Yeah, and the Marlins, they have 32 players out of 40 only making $800K, the league minimum. 32 out of 40 players.
Yeah.
Kerm told me that. But yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I know it's true. I've been following it. And you know what? You can't tell me that those teams shouldn't be punished. That's why I don't have a problem with Major League Baseball's lottery system, because their system is not even halfway based on performance. It's majority based on, oh, you want to tank? You want to kill your revenue? Because Major League Baseball, to this day, is still based on majority revenue with the system. Guess what? We're going to punish you for costing us money. We're going to punish you for costing the league money. We're going to punish you for costing the owners money. That's the only reason that the system exists for Major League Baseball, because we're going to punish you for screwing us.
Yep.
And you know what? I don't agree with it.
But they do the lottery draws in December during football season, whereas the NHL and NBA lottery draws, they're in May. And
well, the lottery draws for Major League Baseball don't matter as much to me because of they're really not based on performance. They're based on how much money you bring in.
They're based on performance and how much money you bring in. Because teams with worse records get better odds at the number one pick as long as they don't violate the revenue sharing policies.
Well, even if they violate the revenue sharing.
Or the other condition, Joey, is if they have a lottery pick in the top 6 for back-to-back years, they have to sit out a year the third year. That's the other rule.
Oh, you know what causes having back-to-back? This is baseball, remember. You know what? Also,
what's that?
Having back-to-back, the amount of money spent. Oh my God.
I mean, right now, the White Sox are number 1 for 2026, 9-23. The Pirates are number 2, 12-21. They're cheap as hell. The Marlins are cheap as hell. They're number 3. The Twins are 4th. I'm surprised they're that bad. The Orioles are 5th. And the Atlanta Braves are 7th right now. So, still a lot of baseball left to be played, but definitely underwhelming. But Orioles and Braves have definitely been the most underwhelming teams so far.
But the point I was trying to make is, if we're going with a lottery system that is not based mainly on performance, Major League Baseball is like, it's like, oh, they don't get this pick. Gone. Unless you're the White Sox and you have the worst record in the history.
Well, the White Sox are paying. They're picking at. The White Sox are picking at like 11 this year, but next year they'll be eligible for that number 1 pick.
In my opinion, the White Sox are a completely different discussion because they are all-time stuff. I mean, they are just hell no. The White Sox are so bad that, every sports talk show in America, didn't matter whether it was called a talk show or not, they were just like, these guys fucking suck, don't they?
That's true.
The Chicago White Sox are on a completely different level. So,
Yeah, but they're not the worst team in the league this year. The Rockies are, but the Rockies, they're picking at 10 or 11 because they had multiple lottery picks, I believe. I believe they have a top 6 pick this year, and they had a top 6 pick in the 24 draft. So,
okay, we'll see about that because I've seen the two White Sox games. I do think they got some nice pitching.
I mean, the White Sox have 9 wins. The Rockies have 6, but it's neither's encouraging. Both are very discouraging.
That is.
The Rockies have 6 wins. The White Sox have 9 so far.
That is not encouraging, Chris. The thought process is simple for me.
But the Rockies are going to be picking 11th, just like the White Sox did last year in 2026.
For me, it's all about Major League Baseball's lottery system. Doesn't really depend on performance. I mean, that's absolutely a part of it.
Yeah.
But it's really the driving factor, absolutely not. It's all about the West is costing us money. So we're going to punish you. That's the premise of Major League Baseball's lottery. And so how can I put it into the same category?
Yeah, and the thing with NHL is you're going to be in a rebuild for multiple years unless you win multiple lotteries or unless you hit on multiple top 10 picks in the draft. That's the whole thing with the NHL rebuilding a team from the ground up. You're going to be in a rebuild from 2 to 5 years minimum, and that's largely dependent on where you're picking in the draft after the lottery draw. So
But Chris, I think we can agree that Major League Baseball lottery is largely to do with revenue, with the other leagues are largely to do with performance.
I think the MLB is a combination of performance and lottery. I will agree to that much. I think it's a combination of record and revenue with baseball. With hockey and basketball, it's just records. Baseball, it's a combination of revenue and records. I'll meet you that far.
Because I believe that the revenue is,
revenue might be the primary factor, but it's a combination of the records and the revenue. That's what I'll say on that.
Well, you have market teams. Market teams are based on the revenue, and that's what's the problem.
The LA Angels market sharing rules. The Nationals, I think they had a top 6 pick in 2024, and they're picking first this year. So that's why the Nationals can't have a top pick in 2026. And I think the Cardinals took J.J. Weatherhold at 6th last year, and they're picking ahead of the Pirates this year. So that's why those 4 teams. So the Rockies, Nationals, and Cardinals, it is them picking in the top 6 back-to-back years why they can't pick in that top 9. And with the Angels, it's revenue sharing. It's market sharing and revenue sharing that's keeping the Angels.
There was actually a debate on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show where they were asking what was the worst franchise in Major League Baseball. And it turned out it was the Rockies, according to the 5-person team.
Yeah, the Rockies are 6-26. The White Sox are 9-23. I have the standings up here on Tankathon. The Rockies are the worst team in the league this year.
And they were saying that is the worst baseball franchise in America.
Well, the thing with the Rockies is last year they had 5 pitchers with an ERA above 4 in their starting rotation. They did nothing to fix that this year. Nothing. That's why they're the worst team in baseball. They could get Trevor Bauer. I know Trevor Bauer has some issues, but if they sign Trevor Bauer, he would be their number 1 starter. That is how bad the Rockies are. If they decided to sign Trevor Bauer to a contract, he would be their number 1 starter. That is how bad the Rockies are. That should say something.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I just thought it was interesting that, everybody who I've heard from Cleveland, that freaking anybody who knows anything about baseball said, who's the worst baseball organization in sports, and they point right to Colorado.
Yeah.
I mean, it's well, you got that you point to it. I mean, who am I?
Yeah, and they're going to be picking 10th in 2026. That's the highest they'd be picking, 10th overall, because they were in the top 6 each of the last 2 years. They got Charlie Condon at 3 this year, and I think they have another pick in the top 6 this season. So that means they can't pick number 1 in 2026. Those are the rules the owners voted on. If you get a lottery pick back-to-back years, you can't pick in the top 6 that third year. That's the rule.
I'm not, and you know how I may don't quite clear how I feel about the lottery, but
I get denying a team a top draft pick for revenue sharing, but denying a team a top draft pick because they had a lottery pick 2 years in a row, it's very arbitrary for baseball. I can understand the thought process with hockey, not giving a team the number 1 pick more than 2 times in 5 years. I understand that with hockey, but with baseball, it just feels very arbitrary, you know? That's all.
Yeah, but for me, if people are trying to not win, this is just the coach in me coming out. If you don't want to win, you deserve it. I will take you back and I will give you 20 freaking laps. You don't try to win as a coach. Can't do anything about ownership. But in coaching, with the players, with the front office, if you're trying to keep, if you're not trying to win and you're trying to keep, problem solving that, you're hurting the whole. That's what he's done. That's what the White Sox have done, and they should be punished for that. And so that's one of the reasons I don't have a problem with Major League Baseball system, because you have so many owners that don't want to win.
Yeah.
It's like the Guardians, you take at one level.
I think there's 3 GMs. There's 3 GMs that have drafted well. The Texas Rangers, the Cleveland Guardians, and the Dodgers. I think only 3 MLB GMs in my top 25 for best GMs in every sport: NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB, MLS. Only 3 GMs for a baseball were from the Dodgers, Guardians, and Texas Rangers. That should say something.
Here's my point. The Guardians spend almost nothing. Revenue sharing is not good for the Guardians. You know what the Guardians do? They would regurgitate their farm system so well, they just bring somebody up there still going to win.
That's basically what Dallas does. They do such a great job reloading their farm system, but they also have no state income tax, which allows them to attract key free agents. I feel like the Stars do a better job attracting free agents than the Guardians do, but at the same token, I would argue the Guardians, I'd give them a slight edge in farm system over the Dallas Stars. I mean, they're both incredible at drafting and developing talent in the minor leagues.
Them, and I think it was one of the Florida teams, I forget which one it was. They said those guys are so good, they have the best farm system in the league. So they don't have to pay and some amount to still be competitive on some level.
Yeah.
Because they are so good at developing players. And so when it comes to that, it's like, so the TV revenue is still going to be, even though the price of admission is going to be high, the TV revenue is still going to be high.
Yeah.
Okay, balances itself out. We're not that much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's like, it goes to show. And Chris, I think that's where you're right. Because the point is that if you have the farm system, if there's no draw, make a business, you don't have to care about the water. How the Guardians got the number 1 pick? I don't know. It doesn't. I think they had one down year. It's the number 1 overall pick. Shit happens.
Yeah.
And every now and then, You know, sun shines on gold that sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
It happened. Should the Guardians have ever gotten the number one pick? Absolutely not. And I think
Actually, they did, Joey. They got Travis Bazzana in last year's MLB draft. It was the first time they ever picked number one, and they got Bazzana in the lottery.
Should they have? And I would say no.
No, because if you take away the lottery rules, the Washington I think the Athletics would have gotten Paul Skeens. And Athletics would have had the number one pick in 2023 and 2024 if the MLB never instituted the lottery, which means Paul Skeens is an Athletic, and I'm guessing Nick Kurtz, who they took 4th overall, who's already in the MLB, would be an Athletic too. But yeah. Nick Kurtz was my number one player initially in the preseason. In my very first 2024 MLB mock, I did have Nick Kurtz at number one. But Kurtz did not have the junior year Bazzana did. That's why Bazzana jumped him. Because Bazzana was better in his draft year.
But for me, I don't think Cleveland should have got the number one pick, but
and the Reds, who went 83 and 79, got the number 2 pick. A lot of people don't want to have that conversation, but the Reds went 83 and 79, and they got the number 2 pick behind Cleveland that year.
I say sometimes the sun shines on gold. It happens often, but it happens.
It does happen.
I'm going to take that situation. That was an anomaly.
Yeah, that was an outlier. I mean, the Nationals.
You can't take an outlier and an anomaly and say, "Oh, this is the basis of what we're doing." No, it doesn't work like that. It's 9 times out of 10. What happens is a team gets punished for revenue sharing in baseball. Sometimes, though, like the Reds and the Guardians, I literally, when that happened, I was sitting there, I was imagining Major League Baseball going on.
No, because they did the lottery in 2023. The Pirates ended up with the 3rd worst record, but they got the number 1 pick, and they got Paul Skeens. The Nationals and Athletics were worse than the Pirates in 2023. But the Pirates ended up winning the Paul Skeens lottery, and the Guardians won the Bazzana lottery.
You can see my point, though. It's like, well, you can see Major League Baseball from, well, yeah.
Well, I'm looking at the MLB news for MLB.com's top 150. And here Jonathan Mayo goes, you look at the top of the board, and I would imagine every team has a group of the first 10 players in a different order. Maybe even internally, there are some split camps on which players should be ahead. An American League scouting director said, I think the overall depth is solid. If there's any consensus about this year's class, high school shortstops are the strength. There are 3 in the top 10 and 11 prep infielders in the top 30 alone. And Ethan Holiday is the headliner among those high school shortstops. So
we were ahead of them then because we were saying that was going to be the strength of this.
I mocked Ethan Holiday at 3 because the Nationals really don't need a shortstop, but the problem is he's the best player in the draft. So
yeah, so you and I had the entire thing figured out when it comes to the process a year before these guys were even talking about it. So kudos to us.
yeah.
We were ahead of them. So, kudos to us.
This college group is very corner heavy, this NL scouting director said. I'm guessing that's about the outfielders. There's a lot of right field, left fielders in this draft. That's basically, I'm guessing that's what the term corner heavy means. After Seth Hernandez, the high school pitching crop is a little thin up top. I think it's actually deeper than most people think it is. I think it's deeper than most scouts think it is because a lot of these players had good ERAs in their +1 draft years. I wouldn't take a high school pitcher in the first round unless I absolutely had to, but I think it's a better pitching group than the scouts are making it out to be. But it's always risky to take a high school pitcher. So,
first thing you know. Right in left field, there's not much difference. What's different is the coordination.
Yeah.
But the thought process is you get the ball, you have to know how it bounces off one side or another. It has to be coordinated enough back. And you have to be able to read the different areas of the field on those corners. And if you can do that, there's not much difference because the arm strength is the same size.
Yeah, but they've got 3 shortstops in the top 5, and 2 of those shortstops are high school shortstops. I'm looking at the updated MLB rankings. Not going to do a mock right now. I'm looking at the updated rankings to see if there's any risers or any players I need to scout for Pitt baseball, because I live in Pittsburgh. I am going to go to a Pitt baseball game because I had a player on Clemson in the top 10. I had a player on Clemson in my top 10 in my MLB mock draft. I had Clemson. Pitt plays Virginia Tech, so I am looking. But I have Cam Canarella, the Clemson right fielder, in my top 10 to Toronto at number 8. So I am going to go scout him when I get the chance, probably when Pitt hosts Clemson in a few weeks. But I'm also looking to see if Pittsburgh's playing, if Virginia Tech's got any prospects worth scouting in person. Because I don't see any prospects on Virginia Tech. I'm looking right now, see if there's anybody or even any high school players in Pennsylvania that are worth scouting. So I am doing my due diligence here quickly.
I was able to put outfielders, and what happened? I played right field, I played left field, I played center. There's the thing. I just told you about left and right. Let's look at center field. It's basically can you judge the ball? How strong at 285 feet, I could fire a ball from center field, point blank to the pitcher's glove, or the pitcher had the glove, and throw out a runner who was tagging up. 285, 300 feet. What's your arm? You have the judgment, you have the arm. I had the judgment, I had the arm, and I knew how to throw the ball. That thing that I've forgotten of, because knowing how to throw the ball. I say this a lot of times with pitchers. What's your release point? This is important. New for outfield. What is your release point? If you're throwing and you need to get somewhere quick, you're laser on that thing. And you are pinpointing where it's going to hit them. Where if it's not 100% native, you might want to print it. You're going to have a higher release point. And you're going to say, I'm going to get there, I'm going to make them think twice. And you're going to hit it in that point. It's all about how you know the situation, what's happening, how you take the ball. Because if, say, somebody's running third, a couple of times this happened to me. And it was they got a good job. I would give them credit for it. I ran up, scooped the ball. There's a ground ball. And I came up immediately. I knew exactly where the runner was, how things were going, where the catcher was, where the likely process was. That whether they're going to slide, whether they're going to stand, whatever, and how fast they're going. These are the things you need to know when you're an outfielder. I would fire that thing because I knew that runner had a jump. When I had jump, I'd fire it. And I would have people at second base ready for everything else. Ask to come to them. No. telling you, that bird's going straight to home plate. I threw out about 80% of everybody that went home on me when I was playing in the field. Because I understood the situation. Really. That's what sets apart a good outfield prospect from a great outfield prospect. They didn't know it was Stadium. If you want Andrew Jones, guess what? Andrew Jones sucked at it. He was an immediate gold glove. And he developed that. If he had the instinct to draw at everybody, he could make the outs, whatever, and the Braves knew it. And they took him, and he was starting with the Braves and he was 19 years old.
Yeah, and Drew Jones, I'm not sure where Drew Jones is in his development. I know Drew Jones is the son of Andrew Jones. I think he's in AA or AAA. I'll look that up in a second, but I am looking to see if there's any prospects from Pennsylvania that I need to scout besides the Clemson guy. I'm double-checking my work and doing my due diligence to see, okay, what else do I need to scout in person besides the Clemson batter? Because it seems like a down year, not just for ACC talent, but for high school baseball talent, Pennsylvania. Because I know we had Cole Young from my old high school, North Allegheny, in 22, and he went in the first round, and Joey Porter Jr. didn't, which shocked me because Jr. also went to my old high school. But what I'm also at is I'm also looking. There was the Mount Lebanon pitcher in last year's draft. I think that pitcher did picked in the first round. So wait. Is that they said Blue Devils. Is that Riverside? Riverside is not Mount Lebanon, but I don't know where Riverside is. So just looking to see who the final player is. Because okay, Archbishop Ryan. So yeah, I mean, no, there's not a player in Pennsylvania I can scout this year. So this is kind of a down year for prospects in terms of talent. So. But yeah, as far as it's going to be interesting though, see what happens with the NHL and NBA lotteries. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the MLB. So there's one player I can scout on Clemson, and Pitt plays Clemson like at the end of the regular season. So I probably will go to that game. It sucks there's not a player on Virginia Tech or Penn State that's impressive, because they know Pitt plays Penn State at PNC Park where the Pirates play. They played West Virginia there last year. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with these lotteries. But yeah, NHL and NBA lotteries are next week. We'll find out. I'm already at work on my NHL because I've looked at Tankathon's big board. I've looked at the big board. I'll look at it really quickly. I'm not going to go through the mock right now, but they have Matthew Schaefer, Michael Misa, Porter Martone at 1, 2, and 3. I do agree with that. They moved Higgins, the preseason #1 pick, down to 4. Anton Frondell's in tier 2. Frondell didn't really impress me in the fall. He did improve his passing and slap shot ability, but it's still less consistent than you'd like it to be. I don't know if I would take him in the top 5. He's listed at number 5 here. Caleb Desnoyers, 84 points in 56 games. I think Caleb Desnoyers might actually be the 4th best player in this draft, as crazy as that sounds. He was the #1 pick in the QMJHL draft. I watched a little bit of Victor Eklund. I was impressed. Roger McQueen, he played first-line center for Brandon Wheat Kings, but he only had 20 points in 17 games. Had multiple seasons with injuries. That's why he's 8th on the boards. There are some people like Elite Prospects. They do Zoom calls about the NHL draft. And Elite Prospects thinks Roger McQueen should be in the conversation with James Higgins for the final player in the top 5, despite only playing 17 games. But McQueen has multiple seasons where he's missed games with injuries. So that would be the argument for why he's at 8. And you could argue he should be lower than that, because you have Jackson Smith, Tri-City Americans defenseman, at number 9, Jake O'Brien at 10, OHL Rookie of the Year last year, 98 points this year. Brady Martin's a player I was told by someone in scouting hockey I got to take a deeper look at. Kashawn Aitchison of the Barrie Colts is a player I liked in the preseason. He's listed at 16. Cameron Reed, I saw his interview on the Steel Flyers podcast. He's listed at 18th overall and 19th in the Tankathon mock draft. Malcolm Spence, preseason top 10 player, 73 points, is listed at 19 now. He's dropped. Ravensburgen, the top goalie in this draft, is listed at 25th. I do think he's going to go in the late first round. Blake Fiddler's the son of Vernon Fiddler. Bill Zonin had 83 points in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. So, and Ivan Rybakin, Milton Gastrin, those are the last two first-round prospects. So that's just the first round. But I think, Simon Wang has dropped all the way to 42. Heoxi Wang, Simon Wang. The Wang has dropped into round 2. Benjamin Cavan. Conrad Fort.
They better drop hard. There's a problem there. It's not.
But 2025 is apparently a really deep draft class. That's what I've heard. I also heard other people think it's top heavy, so I don't know what to believe when it comes to this class. I found 10 gems. I challenged myself, and I actually found 10 gems this year. So I'm of the belief that it's a deeper class. But I could be.
Not put a Wayne in front of you, because you know what happens.
Yeah, but Simon Wang's a good defender. The tape's good.
I hope Simon Wang defends his family honor in a very good sense, or else the Wang is going to fall. And it's not going to be good.
Yeah. I mean,
you give me a Wang, and you expect me not to comment on it.
no, that's not what I'm saying. Right?
You not comment, but you should know my history, Chris. You give me a Wang, and shit's gonna go down whether you like it or not.
Well, that's the thing. Day 2, if he's a second round pick, because we're gonna live stream the final Saturday. The NHL draft used to be on separate days as the NBA draft, but now that the NBA draft's a 2-day event, the NHL draft's a 2-day event, which means rounds 2 through 7, we will be streaming that. That'll be at noon on the final Saturday. They moved the time up. So the NHL draft, it was 11 a.m. last year. It's going to be noon this year. But yeah, if Simon Wang falls to the second round, that's going to be one of the names we hear during day 2 of the draft. Possibly.
A second-rate Wang. That's just never good. I'm so sorry.
I don't know if it's second rate or if it's just a really deep draft class, because this is a very deep draft class, I think. I think it's a deeper draft class than most, because Shane Van Sage was in my top 16 back in the preseason. He's now 34th. I think it's a deep draft class. I think it's not just Charlie Trethaway. I had a preseason first-round grade on him. He's now listed at 46. So I'm looking at this, and I'm saying I think it's a pretty deep draft class. I think.
I really hope
LJ Mooney, Zachary Morin, he was a preseason second round pick. He's now listed as a third round pick. Alex Huang was a late first in the preseason. He's now a third. Owen Conrad, he was one of the sleepers I pinpointed. He's now projected to go to Edmonton at 83. Carlos Handel, he's from Germany, but he went to Canada to play for the Halifax Mooseheads. He's listed at 86th. Emil Gweit, preseason first round pick. He's projected to go 89th to San Jose, who owns Colorado's third round pick. So, yeah, this is a pretty deep class in the sense that there's a lot of talent available. Very deep goalie draft, too. So, I've been telling you for a few years how deep this goalie draft's going to be. So, yeah, I mean, I think, and there's 117 players on prospect rankings. And they have the winger from Sweden to the Dallas Stars in the third round. I'm just curious where they have him ranked individually on their board before I
before I look into that exact pick. So I think they have that defender ranked 92nd, and Dallas has 92. So I just wanted to double check that. But yeah, NHL draft lottery. Matthew Schaefer, Michael Misa will know their fate Monday night. And then I'll comment on that and some of the updated picks in my mock draft. Because I'm already at the point where, I'm going to be locked in on that. Dallas does not win tonight. I'm going to be locked in on that. I'm only going to watch the elimination games, and I'm going to be locked in on the mock draft like I have never been locked in on an NHL mock draft before. Watching tape, going through things. Carter Bear is now listed at 12th. I think Bear is a top 10 pick, but he had an elbow injury, season-ending elbow injury. I've been told to watch Brady Martin at 15. Aitchison was a guy on my radar early in the year. Logan Hensler, only 12 points, 2 goals, 10 assists, but he was a preseason top 5 pick. He dropped to the 20s now. He's listed at 17. We'll see. We'll see what happens with this draft because I think it's a very interesting class. But yeah, we'll have that. And then next week we'll have a recap on the NHL. I'll update you guys on my NHL mock draft. We'll get William's thoughts on round 6 and 7 because we really didn't have a lot of time to break down round 6 and 7 with William. And I'll reveal my top 50 for the 2026 NFL draft. I've made a top 50 big board. I'll reveal that next week. I really don't want to talk football until after the schedule comes out. And then I want to stop talking about football so I can focus on the NBA, NHL draft cycles. But the problem here is only sport William watches is football. So we kind of have to talk about football, even though I'm at the point where I'm tired of talking about football for season 14 of Draft Utopia.
Any sport other than football. I barely watch anything else. So,
that's the problem. I need people that are more than one-dimensional, okay?
Yeah, and, that one dimension just happens in this country.
It's the most popular sport. I get that, but at the same token, it's only one sport. Basketball, you do basketball and you do baseball, but hockey's kind of bland for you. It's kind of milquetoast. It's kind of bland for you, but you try your best with it. You take what you're given. You try. I give you credit for trying, and I get it. Soccer is not your cup of tea. You don't give 2 fucks about it. You've been very blunt about that. But hey, you hit on the Ian Smith pick. Ian Smith's the only player from the 2025 MLS draft that started a game at the major league level. You had him in your top 5. He fell to Portland at 14, and he's the only guy who started an MLS game out of college. So kudos to you, Joey. You got to pick right. You outsmarted the MLS scouts. I got to give you credit when it's due, Joey, because you've given me credit for years. I got to give you credit for that. You outsmarted the scouts in soccer.
Only time it's ever going to happen. I'm going to take this one.
Yeah, Joey takes a lot of pride in being right on that. Because you got the gem and you correctly predicted the gem in the MLS draft. I'm proud of you. I think I'm going to end the show on that.
I'm not going to be right on whatever soccer is again.
So I'm going to let Joey take his victory lap and enjoy this, and I think that's going to be the cue to sign off. But yeah, next week we'll have NHL draft update. We'll have some more NFL content, and then we'll have this NFL schedule show in 2 weeks. And then I don't know if we'll be doing any more NFL content because I really do want to talk about these draft classes for the NBA, NHL. After the NFL draft ends, this is my favorite time of the year because I get to pivot into these other sports and talk about the best players in their respective drafts.
Well, the schedule show is important because I no longer live downtown, so it's getting to know all the games.
Yeah, the NFL schedule shows in 2 weeks because the schedules come out May 14th. So May 17th will be the NFL schedule show where we go through the entire regular season. And we can drag that out. We can make that a 3-week event where we do the regular season on May 17th. We do the postseason on the 24th, and then we reveal the Super Bowls
on Memorial Day, on the Saturday before Memorial Day. We can do like a big build-up for that. Or we can split it up into 2 parts. We could do weeks 1 through 9 on the 17th, and then the 24th we do weeks 10 through 18, and then we do the playoffs. We can make that a 3-part thing. That's the thing, Joey. We don't have to go through every single game in one show if it's too much. You know, we can drag that out. Shit, we could probably make that a 3-parter if we included the playoffs in weeks 12 through 18. If we did the playoffs after weeks 12 through 18, we could even make that a 3-part thing instead of a 2-part thing. So there's multiple ways to branch that out.
I have criticized over the years is that how the podcasts are been increasingly spread out. And it went from 2 hours to 3 hours to 5 hours to 6 hours.
Well, today was only going to be 2 hours. It ended up being 3 hours, but we kind of got sidetracked on the draft lottery rant, and I wanted to preview the upcoming shows before we signed off too.
Here's the thing. Sidetracks are fine. But when it is scheduled for like 6-7 hours, I hate that.
We're not going to do a 6-7 hour show. That's what I'm saying.
If we can hit within 3 weeks or so, we can hit everything. Going down within like 3 hours or so, that's perfect. Restructuring it, as you said.
The thing is, I kind of want to balance the draft content for baseball, football, and hockey with the NFL schedule. I kind of want to balance it, but we're not going to be able to balance it on the 17th as much as I hate to say it, because there's going to be rants that get us sidetracked. I'm trying to avoid those pitfalls. I'm trying to avoid them entirely.
I'm not going to say, major days that you can balance it, because NFL draft.
But I'm focused on this is draft utopia. We got the NHL, NBA, and MLB drafts coming up in the next 2 months. That's why I'm saying we got to balance it.
That's not going to be,
but the thing is, there's 3 Saturdays in June and there's 3 Saturdays in May. So we can do two draft shows. We can do 1 draft show for baseball, hockey, and basketball in May, and we can do 1 in June leading up to the final Saturday in June, which is when the second round of the NHL draft takes place. So it works itself out.
And limit the exhaustion, not only for us, but for the listeners. We can do it in that way because, all it takes is a little bit of structure.
Yeah.
We don't want to have 9-hour shows just for.
I'm looking at the draft lottery. So if the St. Louis Blues lose to the Winnipeg Jets on Sunday, I can give our audience the first 21 picks in the NHL draft out of 32. Right now, Florida has the 22nd pick. They traded it to Calgary, but that pick will move into the bottom 4 if Florida advances to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think they're going to lose to Toronto. You think they're going to win. Hockey Guy thinks they're going to win too. So that pick could move into the bottom 4. Carolina at 23, if they beat Washington, that pick will move into the bottom 4. The Flyers own the Oilers and Avalanche's first-round picks at 24 and 25, but both of those picks could move into the bottom 4 as well. That's why I say and if the Blues do not get mathematically eliminated, I can only give you the definitive top 18 this month, and then the full mock would be probably the week before, or the week 2 weeks before. It just depends, because we got the NBA draft as well as the NHL draft. We're going to have to balance that out.
I'm wondering why it's not making sure.
So,
Not quite sure about that one either.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this and I'm saying, all right, I will start the NHL draft because I'm not going to start the NBA draft until the lottery's settled. I will start the NHL draft, mock draft on Monday, and whatever I get done from then to the top 18, we'll discuss that. I'll try to get the entire first round done so that we have a top 32. But yeah, it's not outside of the first 18 to 21 picks. Everything else is just going to be predictions, speculation, et cetera, et cetera. And then if you want a fuller, comprehensive version of a 7-round mock, that'll be the Saturday. Because the Saturday before the NHL draft, we're going to have a 7-round NHL mock plus a 2-round NBA mock. That show is going to be hell. And then the day 2 of the NHL draft, which is going to start at noon, that could be as early as 3 hours. It could be as late as 6. It could be as late as 6. But we will not start until noon on the final Saturday in June. Just heads up.
That just reminded me. Just piece of information here for you and everybody listening. You know, Sellers, the quarterback from next year's NFL draft, he is Brad Sellers' nephew. So the Sellers family will have 2 professional athletes and 2 major, both the WNBA and NFL, after next year. So I just heard that this morning, that they're all related. So
That's nuts.
I just thought that was a cool.
That is cool.
I just thought that was a cool story.
That is cool, but it's nuts at the same time too. But yeah,
Yeah.
the NHL draft's going to be hell because I'm going to be updating all. It's basically day 3 of the NFL draft in super speed mode. If you take day 3 of the NFL draft and put it in super speed mode, that's day 2 of the NHL draft. So that'll be the final Saturday in June, and then you get July. We pretty much can do whatever until the But yeah, we'll split it out. I don't know if we'll do 6 weeks or 9 weeks. I think it depends because I do want to cover some draft content, but I'm mainly going to use next Saturday to cover hockey content, and then we might cover a little bit of the MLB in 2 weeks from now, but I want to get at least the first 6 or the first 9 weeks up and when we do the NFL scheduling. We're not going to do all 18 weeks in one show. I think we're in agreement on that. We probably could, but it would be like a 6-hour show. It would not be a 2-3 hour show. It would be closer to 4, 5, maybe 6 hours. And if we did that, we'd run out of NFL material to talk about. So yeah, that's the thing. I basically told William this show and the NFL schedule show are probably going to be the only 2 football shows left. But thing is, I've got a 2026 big board at the top 50 out already. And we also got the schedules that come out in 2 weeks. So we are going to have to find a way to balance that with the we're going to have to find a way to balance that with the drafts for hockey and baseball and basketball. So next week will be a hockey show, but I don't know what's going to happen after that in 2 weeks from now when the NFL schedules come out. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We can revisit round 6 and 7 if William wants to re-examine some of the late round picks in round 6 and 7. I will put that to a vote for next Saturday. I'll message him after the show. We can put that to a vote. But yeah, it's mainly going to be a hockey show next week. And then we're going to have an NFL show with the scheduling, and that could be 2 parts, 3 parts. I still want to incorporate some of the other drafts into that show, but it's mainly going to be NFL with the scheduling coming out. And but yeah, we've been on the air for 3 hours, 22 minutes. I'm going to sign off on TalkShoe. I'm also going to sign off on Restream. And yeah, that'll do it for today. We'll see you guys next Saturday with the NHL. NHL draft order will be out on Monday, so we'll have that. We'll have updates on Game 7. So first round, we're getting Florida, Toronto. Toronto's got home ice. I don't think Ekblad's going to resign. Somebody asked, is Ekblad going to resign? Ekblad, in his second game back from a suspension, he hit Brandon Hagel. He got another 2-game suspension after getting a 20-game suspension. And that rolled over into Game 1 against Toronto. So no, I don't think Florida is going to resign. If he only had 1 suspension and he dominated the playoffs, maybe 2 suspensions, contract year, I don't think the Panthers are bringing back Ekblad. I think someone else is going to pick him up. I think they're going to roll with Seth Jones as their number 1 defenseman since they traded for him, and he's under contract till 2030, and they're just going to move on from Ekblad. And someone else is going to get Ekblad in free agency. But yeah, good question from the chat room. We do appreciate it. But yeah, Carolina's playing Washington as Joey and I predicted. Vegas is playing Edmonton as Joey and I predicted. Joey had Florida, Ottawa. I had Toronto, Tampa.
So we were half right on that. And then we don't know what's going to happen in the Central yet. Dallas plays Colorado tonight. Winnipeg plays St. Louis tomorrow. I had Dallas, St. Louis. Joey had Colorado, Winnipeg. We'll find out what happens in the next 2 days. I really am hoping for Dallas, St. Louis. I mean, St. Louis is fun to watch, and Gruden was rocking the St. Louis Blues gear. Gruden was at the Blues game. He was wearing a Blues jersey. He was loud as hell. It was great. It was entertaining. It was fun to watch. But yeah, we'll have updates on hockey next Saturday, and then we'll get into the NFL scheduling. And if William wants to revisit rounds 6 through 7, I'm open to that. I've already said what I wanted to say about these picks in rounds 6 through 7, but I think William has too, because he wanted to mention Ewers and some of the guys that got picked. So, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I've already signed off on TalkShoe, and I'm about to sign off on Restream.